we're going to have a discussion with the all-female panel, mashallah, a discussion about sexual assault within the Somali community. We have a great host of great bunch of panelists all across from different countries with a variety of experiences within this field. We're going to go in alphabetical order. So if we can have Fadhia, if you can unmute yourself and just give us.
Hello, salam alaikum. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Salam alaikum. My name is Fatia Absia. I live in the United States. I am a writer, filmmaker, storyteller in different formats or platforms or venues. And I also consider myself, I guess, children's and women's rights advocate. And yeah, I think I'll leave it to that for now.
Amin, are you there?
Is it just the two of us? What happened to everybody else?
I think everyone else is muted, but I think Amin has just gone muted for a minute. Maybe we can just go.
Yeah, we're just waiting for her to come back, to be honest.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Amin is just left. So who was next after? Who was after Fadhia?
I can look, actually. Let me just have a quick look. And
It's Fatuma Hassan? Fatuma Hassan?
Yeah.
Like you just said, my name is Fatuma Hassan. I'm a barrister. I was called to the bar 2 years ago by the Honorable Society of the Middle Temple. I have since relocated back home to Zambia. That's where I was born. So I'm currently working as a lawyer and as a company legal secretary. That's about it.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I'm the third person. My name is Hafsa Hassan. My background is very varied, to be honest, because I would bounce around between different careers. My degree is in anthropology, and that took me into working with the UN at a very early age. But then I switched over to teaching because I realized I had a passion in teaching or whatever. Worked in the UK and in Saudi Arabia, and came back at the end of 2018 to pursue a completely different career in like coaching and broadcasting. I have a platform and a podcast called Turbans Ain't Hijab, where I try to amplify the voices of Black Muslims, but in particular Black Muslim women, as I feel like we're very underrepresented at the moment. So yeah, that's about it for me for now, inshallah. Who's next? Who's after me?
Thank you, Hafsa. Next we have Rahma.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, ladies. Horta waxaan salaamayaa Amina, who put this lovely event together, and everybody else, iyo dadka Soomaaliyeed ina daawanaya wherever they are. My name is Rahma. I am the co-founder of Aisha Women's Development Program. It's also known as AWO, back home in Hargeysa. And I'm also an educator, and I'm in London at the moment.
Thank you, Rahma. Next we have Reiso.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Reiso. I'm currently based in Djibouti. I've worked extensively as an organizer and mental health advocate, and I'm excited to be here today. I'm also representing the Somali Mental Health Fund, which has been organized by a group of young women in order to set up a fund so that survivors can have access to free therapy.
Thank you, Reiso. Next, we have Sagal.
Hey, I'm Sagal. Sagal Warsame. And yeah, so I've got undergrad in criminology, which I focus my dissertation on rape victims and whether there was a rape culture in the UK. And I have a master's that lightly kind of touches on gender-based violence in an international context in regards to places of conflict. I used to work at gender-based violence organisation in the UK, but I've kind of like switched careers, and I work in the refugee sector as an advocate. But I still kind of touch on, I believe, these topics, and I think it's important for me to state that I'm a intersectional feminist, especially within this topic. So I just thought I'd kind of throw that out there, and yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Sagal. Next we have Simone.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Simone. On my social media, my name is Simone Skin. I make funny lives and do funny story times. That's what some might recognize me from. Apart from that, I have a background in psychology. I work with the mental health of the elderly, and I'm born and raised in the Netherlands, currently live in France, but studied in England. That's why I speak a lot of different languages in one paragraph. So yeah, that's who I am, and that's pretty much me.
Thank you, Simone. Next we have
You're welcome.
Rhoda. Rhoda, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Rhoda. My background is in psychology. I got it from Brunel University. I have worked as a counselor with a private company that was partnered with the NHS. At the moment, I am a natural motivator. I have my own page on Instagram, and I am also a depression counselor, and I'm a mom as well.
Thank you, Rhoda. Sorry for skipping you. I'm having a look at the list and my eyes jumped. Next we have Suad Duale.
Hey everybody. Hi. My name is Suad Duale, and I'm psychotherapist. I'm therapy. I have my own private therapy clinic, and sometimes I work in different backgrounds as therapy. I work with children, I work with adult, trauma, everything. And a lot of times I specialize. My area interesting is and trauma, and especially sexual abuse. I work a couple of years now with victims with sexual abuse. I'm doing my doctorate now for counselor psychology, PhD. I teach psychology, and yeah, I'm founder for Hadal. We're trying to limit mental health in Somali community, and I'm working for this for a long time. I can say for that. And actually, what inspired me becoming therapy was a young man and young girl who've been abused, and I promised myself I will make a difference wherever I can. Yeah.
Thank you for that introduction, Suad Duale. We're going to jump straight into it. And this question goes to Suad and Rahma. And as I said previously, even though we have lead panelists for each question, if there's anything that you want to add on to eventually once those lead panelists have said what they want to say, just raise your hand or and then yeah, you can comment. So first question, why don't we talk about abuse, and what stops us from talking about abuse? Suad.
Before I start, I want to in our audience, wherever who listen to us, if this trick anything for you, please look after your well-being, and you need to be careful, because I know this is, and we don't know what is right or wrong. We're sorry if we trick anything for you. And that being said, for me, for my opinion, I think when it comes to Somali community, we have 3 reasons. I think, for my opinion, we don't talk about sexual abuse. One of them is we are collect culture. When you are collect culture, is that mean your individuality will go down. It's mean we everything as group, everything to loyal to Qabil, everything is who you are for. What happened is there is stigma, honor, aib, and no, it would be okay if it. But that is one of the main reasons, because when you are collect culture, that means the justice don't be served all the time, because the justice cannot be served, because what is stopping is this group of collected, and they saying, oh no, it's aib because it will affect all of this group. And that is one of the reasons we have in this issue, because we never take responsibility, and we don't give the person whatever, and if any did something wrong, or to bring them to justice. And that is issue with the collect culture. The second thing is, I think, from my opinion, is the way as Somali community we see sex, and the way we see sex only we see as something man can own it, woman cannot own and can not own it or talk about it. When the man is getting married, oh, and who's astu and who's door who's hafadan. When the woman get married, well, asturale. The language we use is totally like sex is draft for every humankind. Anybody can have sex draft. Women can have more sex draft than men. The masculinity and the way we teach sex is something shameful. But what happened is sex becoming this shameful for when somebody happened to do with sex. It's just the shame. It's the shame coming with that sex, with the word. No. We don't talk about it. We don't, because the only thing we present with sex is, yo, arudal, that's it. Behind that, the discussion, what is sex? Sex is most intimacy thing people can share. And the children, especially the girl, when you raise girl, everything about her is aib and shame. She cannot own her body. But what we're teaching is when something happen or somebody take away for her right, but sometimes the boy being abused too, because we associate sex and shame all the time. And that is one issue we have. Because we not think about sex is something important for all of us. We will always say, oh, man, they can do that, it's okay. My woman, it's just okay, they can accept it. And don't forget, if you go back 45 years ago in Somali history, if women get married and didn't want to have sex with the man, a lot of people, they will come in the room and they will hold her, and everybody, he will have sex with her to just make her pregnant. And that is our culture. That is it.
So wouldn't you say it's true to this day in regions back home where it's, far from like the main city, still to this day, if, I've heard stories, I can't say whether it's true or not because I don't know someone specifically, but me go kale that, marka ina yarlog, marka gursato ina wili, my cousin was telling me qarba fadista outside of the house and they say muku qabana, and it's almost like it's a norm.
That is the norm, because the reason I'm saying this, my ayah used to tell me all this story, and I met in my lifetime really, I met Somali women in all age, and in therapy room I've been places where I see most of vulnerable places for people, and the story they tell you how the thing happened to them is behind any imagination. And our culture, we silence people, and that is why sex is always, it don't present to us. You can own your clothes, you can own your gold, you can own your kids. How cannot I own my body? If it's not mean I'm married. Like men can rape their wife. Well, if you say that, they will say, wait, are you crazy? That is it. It's my husband. She's my wife.
Do you also think our community has normalized the abuse that, wives can, in the sense of your husband can't rape you, or, you can't, what I'm trying to get at is the specific language that we use in our community. Do you feel like that somehow affects why people don't talk about abuse?
Exactly, one of the language we use. For me, in therapy room, I see a lot of people, they're not able to express their emotion because the language being expressed. And don't forget, Somali language, we don't have that much language expressed for when it comes to mental health. And psychology is only 35 years, and Somali is being war more than 31 years. But our language rich to do with mental health is not there yet. But what happened is, when you do what they call it, the best sense, when you scribe in your emotion and when you're telling exactly your emotion, there is total different. When you're scribing how it is. When I tell you one word and you understand me, that's it. But what happened in our language is, I say to you, qof baa i xumeeyey. That is the language the most we use of abuse. That is not, this word don't give justice. What happened to these people? You take away their life, you take a lot of things. But that is the language we use, because the language is so making it as pressing. But what happened? The amount of trauma coming with, we don't see it, because you don't see it, because it's the language is give you that sentence to make it short. But what happened? And instead, the victim able to express their emotion, we shutting down, and the language not helping either, because society trying to make it as small as it is. And that is what other one. The third one, and is the impact of the abuse, the behavior the survivor have. The survivor, when somebody been abused sexual, they have some of behavior, and that's coming for the trauma of abuse. One of this behavior is the victim, they feel shame. Sexual abuse associated with shame. When you feel in shame, you take responsibility. Something is not your responsibility. It's done to you. It's not your fault. What happened? The abuser makes sure the victim think that is they wanted this. But what happened? The shame coming with the sexual abuse, they carry on with that the shame. And the other thing what happened? Sometimes it's psychological impact with the abuse. What happened when somebody been sexual abused? What they do sometimes, they go back, have sex again with the abuser. And the reason they do that, not because they like it, because psychologically they want to end doing what happened to them. Sense of, can I have power? Can I take this off for me because I can control? Maybe this time I want it. But this way, what happened? They trying to get that control. But Somali society, we're culture society, we say, oh, it happened to you in the first time. My is the psychological, the trauma impact is happening. And the other thing what happened in some of the impact you have is some people try to have more sex to get control, because their body, they feel that is the way I can get control. That is one. It is actually, these people, they are suffering. They are really suffering. But some of the behavior they do is, can I undo what happened to me? Can I get control? Can is that? Or when you are collective culture, they say, oh, adiga duni marki horaba marlabada dad ku noqotay. And that is actually trauma.
So add with that, I just want to ask you another question. So mashallah, this lovely lady sent me a message, and she's given me permission to read it out and leave her name out of it. She said, hi Amina, I watched the video about sexual abuse in the community and I have something to add. Maybe you can bring it up in the future videos. She says, the psycho abuse I know personally in my own relatives, people who were abused as children when they grew up. They too became abusers. Currently, I know of third generation abuse in my own family. I became an activist in order to prevent abuse, and alhamdulillah, I managed to stop some. What people don't understand is that unfortunately, sexual abuse is so rife that people can't even condemn it, because chances are they used to abuse as teenagers. So it's shameful, past, perhaps they thought it was normal. So what I'm trying to ask you, do you think, can you explain what, for those that are watching, what psycho abuse is for us, please? And do you, like you were saying before, you know, when someone's abused and, you know, tend to seek out somehow to get this power back, do you think in their mind this somehow can become normal, or can you just...
No. That would be not justice, no. The victim, they do some behavior to do with sexual abuse. That is, we don't want to generalize everything. That is wrong, and it will be not justice for all of this victim happening. The question is, first, is if anybody been abused can be becoming an abuser? Yes or no? No one know. Did you everybody know tomorrow you will be good person or bad person?
No.
No one know. But studying saying you're likely. But this is trauma happening. For what happened, sometimes what happened, when the abuse happened to somebody and the justice never be served to them, did you know some of the things the victim they wish to have is acknowledgement, sorry? This is actually one of some of the victims, that is one of the things they wish to have, somebody acknowledge and say to them, sorry, and I wish I didn't do to you. That is, I see some people who wish that. But the acknowledgement, this is, you take something from me, that is when, come back to your question is, if somebody been abused, can they become an abuser? It can. Maybe they anger what happened to them and they're trying to do it again to get out of it. But the circle, it can happen, but at the same time, we cannot say it happening to these people and they will carry on. No, sometimes it's amazing people in this life. I met this lady who 73 years old, and she been sexual abused when she was 10. baadiyahay joogtay xoolahay hooyadeed baa ku tiri aabbaha u gee caanaha, and then xoolihii bay socotay. She took the milk to bring her dad. In her way to her dad from Woolkogi to her and where she's going, this woman telling me her story. 3 men passed by and they raped her. What happened? The only thing happened is just, well, nothing. But life passed by. She raised amazing 5 kids. But one of the things...
Mashallah. So I think this this view of what they're trying to say is, and you know, like I'm not trying to say no survivor can become an abuser. That's definitely not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to ask is, for instance, those survivors who continuously go through being sexually abused again and again and again by the same predator, has it been proven or shown that it has different types? Can it have, because what she's saying is, I'm wondering, does it become almost like it's a normal behavior? Do they think it's normal eventually because they're experiencing it so much again and again?
Exactly. If you know that is your normal since childhood, that is your normal because your environment have impact on you, what you see normal and what you don't see normal, and that is yes, your environment can impact how you see and how you can. If example, the other issue we have in our society, man can, like, he can have any sexual assault a woman and he will walk away, he will be fine. Because, end of the day, he's man. Because the environment and society normalized for him.
Great, thank you, Saad. We're gonna move on to Rahma. Rahma?
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, perfectly. So the same question, Rahma.
Okay, so what was the question? Hello?
So the question was, why don't we talk about abuse and what stops us from talking about abuse?
Why don't we talk about abuse and what stops us from talking about abuse? So I think, why don't we talk about abuse? Saad has gone through it. So I will go through what stops us from talking about abuse. There's 2 things. It's either the society or the person who's being abused, which is the survivors. I like to call them survivors instead of victims, because that's how I like to address them. So what stops us from talking about abuse usually is because it's an uncomfortable subject. Our people don't like to talk about something that is true and is as uncomfortable as women and sex and abuse. And it doesn't happen in our community. It doesn't affect us. Muslim baynu nahay, dhaqankeena maaha, inaga inaguma dhacdo. You know, things like that. They use those kind of terms. So, and what I've seen for the 4 years that I've been back home, it's usually not the society that's the problem. It's the survivors themselves don't have the ability to speak up because they don't have anybody to turn to. In this country, in the European countries, and obviously over the Medina, it's different because survivors have centers that they go to. They can receive psychological help. They can receive counseling. They've got the means to receive help. Whereas back home, it's completely different. If a survivor goes through an ordeal like this, they have no one or nowhere to turn to. So they would rather stay quiet. So how would the society even know that there is abuse going on in the community when the survivors have no means of speaking up? So for example, there's organizations and women's organizations and NGOs back home who say they speak or work for women's rights. I have not seen one center or one hospital where there is a center where women or survivors of abuse or anybody who's being abused can go to and seek help. Not one center. So the survivors don't have the means to speak up. So it would have been, this day and age, it would have been a subject that's being brought up all the time. But because the survivors can't speak up, they have no one to turn to, they think that, you know, lama aaminayo, ama lama rumaysanayo, ama if she does speak up, once marka u horeysa waxa dhacaysa, reerkeedii, like, she's going to be disowned from her family. She's going to be on her own. She needs to know that she's going to receive support at the end of the day. Tiba ma jirto. And sorry, the second point is, so our people, Somalis, do not understand what abuse is completely. How many forms are you ukala baxa? What is abuse? You ku dhici kara, you sameeya. Who can be an abuser? They have no idea whatsoever because they don't have the information. It doesn't come. TV awareness. There is no workshops that people can go to. There is absolutely no information on abuse anywhere. So abuse usually people think it's physical or sexual. There's so many forms of abuse that people go through in life. Sometimes they don't even realize they're being abused. So it's physical, domestical, sexual, emotional, financial, institutional, material abuse. There's so many forms of abuse. Or society, our Somali community, that sometimes a survivor a victim doesn't even know that they're being abused. So waxa weeye marka u horeysa sidee baynu ugu gudbin karnaa Soomaalida ama dadkeena that abuse happens on a daily basis in our community, and what forms and type of abuse ayaa jira. Sidee baa lagu maxaa la garan karaa? How can you identify a person who's a
Rahma, are you
victim
saying
of,
basically,
how can you even identify an abuser? That's important.
so Rahma, do you think it comes down to like you said, if I've understood you correctly, if if they don't know that there's so many different forms of abuse, how can they even recognize if they're experiencing it?
Absolutely.
If they don't understand it. Thank you, Rahma. We have 3 people that put their hands up, so we're going to go to Reiso first.
I think just from experience, I've seen some discourse that was going on, especially back home. The issue that we have as well is we conflate consenting, having consensual sex with rape. So so that is also something that needs to be clear and said loudly. When we have somebody that abuses another person, it's almost like there's this idea that there was some kind of sexual consenting thing that went wrong, when the issue is, it's not about desirability, it's not about attractiveness, it's not about somebody, it's none of that. It's about power, and it's about somebody that is going to be exerting that power or control over you and taking something away from you. Once we understand it like that, we no longer are going to have these excuses of, he wasn't thinking with the right head, or any of these ridiculous things that we hear constantly. So I think that is also falls into the language that we're using. So which also explains why we don't talk about abuse. And I think the second point is we also have to make it clear that our culture is extremely misogynistic. We know, and I've seen it happen as well, if a woman gets raped, what happens? So, or the girl's gonna have to get married to the person that abused her, because we have this idea of hala astro, like she needs to, it's almost like a property that's been damaged, therefore you need to either take responsibility by caring for her because no one else is going to marry her, or you need to pay whatever price that they deem is the value of what had happened to her, and then not a single cent goes to the actual survivor. It's being shared amongst the men, the tribal, people amongst the men. So those are 2 points that I wanted to raise that also makes it even more difficult in our community specifically, and that needs to be said. And perhaps a third point, which might affect more Somali women in the West, it could be that we can't even admit that there are some people who do drink, who do drugs, who choose to have consensual sex. So when you can't even say, oh, that maybe you were inebriated, or you were under, the influence, or maybe you were high, or maybe you had agreed to a specific act, but you didn't agree to something else, it makes that conversation so much more difficult. And I think that's also something that's quite specific in our communities as well.
Thank you, Rayso. We're going to go to Hafsa, and then afterwards Suad.
I just wanted to add the point that having spoken to family members and also being an educator and dealing with Somali children a lot of the time, I feel like this is such a widespread issue that facing it would mean that it would hit a lot of our male relatives, okay, on the Somali men that we know. So I feel like it is crazy to me, the numbers of either ex-survivors or people who have had some type of sexual violence happen to them, either molestation from a young age, whatever spectrum you want to give it. The numbers are completely outrageous. So for me, what I'm experiencing, especially from a perspective of a teacher, having all these very young girls who, kudos to them, to be honest, through having these conversations, were brave enough to come and have a conversation with me, not with the school counselor because they don't want to get their parents involved, but just to have another Somali adult who they felt safe with, to be able to be open and express themselves in that way. The number of students that were coming to me were just, it got to a point where I myself had to go and contact some type of official, like a therapist and counselors that would actually come and speak to these girls outside of school, because I felt like there has to be some type of duty of care to actually protect these children. And actually, I don't have the know-how, but I need to make sure that they are in the right hands. There's two, I feel like if we really deeply were to unpack how deeply rooted this issue was, you would look around and guarantee you, I know for a fact, the survivor stories within my own family, so many of our male relatives would be hit. Either your husband, your brother, your son, your someone that you're related to. And I feel like that reality is something that our community is not truly prepared to face. Because we have this ideal of, we're 100% Sunni country, 100%, Muslim, we are not ready to deal with the reality that we are actually knees deep down in sexual violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment. It's just, we're just not ready to face that reality yet, I feel like.
Thank you, Hafsa. And next we're going to go on to Suad Duale, and then Simone, and then Fathia, before we move on to the next question.
I think what I was saying, most of them they've been saying, but I think I wanted to clear one point. And abuse didn't only not happen to women, it happened to the men and boys too. And actually, the way we box boys is, if you talk about it, you're not man no more. But they suffer in silence, worse way. And when the women being abused, especially women, they tell them, oh, naag baa tahay dhexda xidho weligeed buu dhici jirtay. I don't know why we have this mentality. We always should be, we have answer for our pain, like you should carry on like you not exist with your what happened to you. But my heart go to the children. Is that child, you take away from them the childhood, you take away most important thing for them. They don't know what the life is will be in end of that tunnel. But what happened in Mika Somali, as Somali society, the issue other we have is studies show all of the world 85% the abuse and the people who are abusing sexually is close people to you. They're not part of you. That is the people you care about you sometimes, the people, and it's confusing. That is why some survivor, they don't know how to ask help because it's confused. Imagine the person who should love you, sometimes it's the person is abusing you. That is psychological, is really have big impact. And the other thing what Rahma saying is truth is we don't know. We like the concern and your issue what is sex concern. Really, everything is wrapped up under religion. And I think that is the other issue we have. Because if we learn for something man going to teach the view, I don't want you to teach my view about my religion. You don't teach me about your view. Just listen to me what I'm saying to you. And I think that is other issue. We don't listen, and it's no safe space. Safe space totally is not available. Whether you are in West culture or whether you are in Somalia, Somali children sometimes they struggling to have safe space to express their emotion and to feel safe to say how they feel. But imagine you grow up like that. If anything happened to you, where are you going to talk? Who are you going to turn? But we should be shame ourselves because we lay down these people and these children again.
Thank you, Suad, so much. We're gonna go to Simone.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, I wanted to touch on a couple of points that really struck out to me. One of them was what Hafsa said about, are we really ready to acknowledge the problem? Are we ready to find out? It could have been your father who raped these people. It could have been your uncle who raped these people. It could have been your cousin. It could have been your brother. Are we ready? I feel like a lot of us know that there might be people that we know, doesn't necessarily have to be your family. It could also be family friends, because everyone is our uncle and our auntie. That are we ready to, is it the reason we don't want to acknowledge this problem because we're scared? Because we know? And the other thing that I wanted to say is, I also feel like when you said something about the abuse cycle that someone conceived as something normal, I feel like our community, the attitude that our community has towards these survivors is that it shows through how they basically we don't see it as a crime. We see it more as a behavioral problem, because if you would say something about kids being molested, for example, specifically, their attitude changes. When it comes to rape, what we think about is a girl 3 o'clock in the evening wearing a short skirt that gets raped by a stranger. That's the image that they have, because their response is always, what is she wearing? What was she doing outside? You didn't even give any context to the story. That's one thing. Another thing that I wanted to touch upon is to basically come back to what Rahma said about abuse. It's true. Do they know what abuse is? If there is emotional abuse, because they don't already acknowledge the sexual abuse. So do they acknowledge the emotional abuse? Will they acknowledge that there is mental abuse? So I feel like a lot of us talk about it and think, how can I say this? A lot of us talk about it and think that we talk about it as if it's not a crisis in Somalia. Like, rape is very rampant, and it's not something that happens or started today. It's something that's been happening back in Somalia. And Mantu, where kids are 3 years old, 4 years old, being gang raped just randomly being gang raped for no apparent reason. Waxaan leen dad Muslina, waxaan leen dad dhaqan leh. And I think it's really important to, because you guys are saying, why don't we talk about abuse, and why, and what's making us stop talking about abuse is because, first of all, you have to acknowledge that there's abuse. You have to acknowledge that people are suffering from this. And you must imagine these people, the people that are coming out today in the Western world. Think about the people that are back from Djibouti as well. A lot of girls used to get gang raped for no apparent reason, just because they were in the wrong neighborhood. Maantana waxa weeyaan aabayaal, waa adeeryaal, waa dad maanta. Like I said, are we ready to actually have this conversation, actually do something about it? Because most of us haven't talked about our parents. Some of our parents may have the same sentiment. They may not mean it like that, but their whole mentality when it comes to rape and what it is, it's completely distorted. It's far from what we see, from what we hear, from what the reality really is within our community. So in order to be able to do something about it, this abuse that's happening within our community, I think it's really important that we also acknowledge it starts within ourselves, like within our families, to make this topic discussable and to challenge our own parents if we want to challenge other people into, inshallah, hopefully making a better, into solving this basically problem.
Thank you, Simone. Next, we're going to go on to Farhia and then Rada, and then we have to move on to the next question. Farhia?
Assalamu alaikum. So I noticed we're pedaling between English and Somali. Who is our audience? Can
our
I speak
English,
Somali or?
So mainly
English?
English, but if you need to speak a few Somali words here and there, but mainly English, please. Thank you.
Okay. So, so first of all, I think first and foremost, what we often need to understand is that our culture, the Somali culture in general, is designed to protect the adult male. It really is. I mean, not children, and therefore young boys are part of children. While they're still children, the culture is not, that protection is not available to them. So it's designed to protect the adult male at any cost. And the people who are part of this shield, that are shielding these perpetrators from their crimes, many of them are women, Somali women. Whether we like it or not, we have to admit the facts here, because these abuses often, more than any other place, they take place at home, or a safe place, whether it's your parents' home, your own home, or your relatives' home, if you live with your relatives, or if you visit your relatives, or your neighbors, if you go to visit your neighbors or spend the night at your neighbor's home. And so it's obviously what people dadkaad aamintay, dadkaad maaragtay lagugu aaminay. So dumarka Soomaaliyeed, I talk about this very, very often. We need to realize it's us that spend the most time with our children, and we need to take responsibility for our own actions and for our own being, and for our families and for our children. We need to stop leaving our children. First of all, we bring a lot of people. Our homes are filled with people with all kind of mental health issues. You know, we're always shielding uncles and distant relatives and there and all kind of people. We bring them to our homes, and we sometimes leave them with our children. We force our children to give them a hug, to sit in their lap, to spend time with them, which is pathetic. And so, and then we tell the children, especially, when I was growing up, I'm older than all of you. When I was growing up, you were told, if anybody touches you certain ways, you know exactly what's going to happen if you ever come forward, because you will be slapped across the face so hard, and sometimes will be beaten so hard. How do you know? How do you know that somebody touch you like that? How do you know that that's what the person was trying to do? How do you know that alaabtan magacaasa la yidhaahdaa? How do you, so adigi baba, so what are you going to do? Now I have so many young girls who are sending me their stories. I have a young girl who was raped raped by her uncle, her first uncle. She lives with her grandmother and she lives with her entire family, except her mother who passed away. And her uncle, her muhrim, raped her when she was 11 years old. And he told her that if you ever mention this, I will kill you and your father, and I will, especially your father, the only person she has left. And I'll take, and you know where he's going to end up with. So then the young girl gets pregnant. And then what happens? She is seen as a damaged goods. When she eventually tells what happened to her and who raped her, everybody hates her. Nobody wants to see her face or wants to have anything to do with her. So oftentimes these victims or survivors, I consider the ones that are in Somalia still victims. The survivors we're talking about are the people who are now in a safer place. So then this young girl is sent to a room. They keep her in a dark room for 9 months. And after giving birth, they take the child from her. Who knows what happened to the child? Probably the child gets killed, because this happens very, very often where babies are killed. And then she gets sent to a family in Hargeysa so she can enslave herself for her family. Now that she's no good, she's nothing, she has to work like a dog for her family and earn $40 to give back to the people that abused her, that didn't want her anymore. These stories are so common, you can't even, I stay awake, I'm sure. I'm not even a psychotherapist or psychologist, and I get so many of these stories, and it keeps me awake. I will leave it to that right now. It's the women that protect these men, because the fathers are often all out and about. They don't know what's going on. The woman finds out, and she still doesn't do anything about it. So a lot of us women are responsible for what happens to our children and what goes on, especially back home and even abroad.
Thank you, Fathia. Rhoda?
Hi, I believe the statistics of rape in Somalia is so high that it's literally it's underestimated. People think it doesn't happen a lot, but I believe that it happens in every other house because it goes into a circle. Somebody rapes someone, well, karma happens. That person's family will be also raped. If there's a young man who rapes kids, later his kids will be raped too, because that's how it works. Karma will come back to your own family. So because it's so many numbers, rape incidents that people underestimated, or it has become, because it's so many, it has become normal. People have normalized it, and that's why they don't talk about it, because they think it's normal. It's just part of their culture. It's part of Somali culture. So basically, the Somali culture has always accepted rape to be something normal. And that's where the problem is. That's why nobody talks about it. And there are so many barriers. Everybody will advise you not to talk about it. If somebody gets raped, everybody, the whole community, it's going to change into why are you bringing shame to the family? Because rape happens within families, and you can't bring shame to your family. And the next thing, if you talk about it, it might also change into a tribal thing. One tribe might say, why did this tribe mention so-and-so? So for that reason, it's so normalized that people just see that's something normal. And that's really, shameful. So that's what I wanted to add. It's so normalized. That's why people don't talk about it.
Thank you, Rhoda.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the next question, which is, what can we do as a community to support survivors of sexual violence and gender-based violence? Sagal? Sagal, you mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Cool, thank you. I think I've got a few things to mention, but one of the main things for me is quite obvious, I think, is creating awareness. I think when I was working in the gender-based violence sector, for me as an advocate who's supporting survivors, I think one of the main barriers for our survivors was engaging with services that did not have any awareness of gender-based violence, has sexist views. And I think a lot of the times where I was supporting them, I had to actually, educate these services, social services, the police force, the criminal justice system, to actually make them aware of the types of, especially with the subtle abuses that our survivors were experiencing. And I think for our community, this is an issue in the UK in the criminal system and services that work with survivors. I would say is a major issue. So I think within the Somali community, I could imagine awareness and education is a major issue as well. So I think that was one of the main things, is having these conversations. That's why I was really happy to see on on Twitter, on Somali Twitter, to see survivors coming forward and having these conversations and creating awareness, where it was creating a space for other survivors to and people to actually start looking at their past and be like, actually these relationships that I might have had in the past and these experiences that I have was abuse, and being able to identify that. So I felt like that was I think awareness is a major thing that we need to really work on. I think without awareness, we're not going to be able to dismantle the Arab, culture. And I think without being able to dismantle that, then we are creating a space where these perpetrators are having a space where they can continue to exploit within these spaces. So I think that's one of the major things, to have these conversations. And with having these conversations, we as a community need to start creating safe spaces for to come forward and be able to share their stories. I think being able to share your stories and having a space where you can come forward. And some survivors don't want to go, every survivor has a different purpose of, their journey to healing and, overcoming these traumas. And I think if we create a space where they can just be heard, sometimes people just want to release what's happened to them and be able to have acknowledgement. And I think that would be that's really important. And I think we need to really dismantle that hype culture, because I think we won't be able to have a safe space for our survivors without dismantling that. For me, one of the really most frustrating things of working in this sector, in that sector was, and one of the reasons why I left was, it was not survivor-led and it was not focused on the agency of the survivor. For me, what I found really difficult is when I was working with these survivors and they were going through the criminal justice system, those processes that were taking away their agency and the way they wanted to handle the situation that's essentially happened to them, and essentially is an experience that is disempowering. I noticed that as they were going through those processes, these processes were also disempowering them, because they didn't have agency. So I think when we start focusing on working with survivors and supporting survivors, we need to allow them to have their agency on what they want to do, where they want to do, where they want to go with that, with their journey, on how they want to do it. And what I noticed as someone of color working in the sector, there was a lot of our service users were people of color, and the service wasn't culturally sensitive to their needs. And I think we need to start, I think this is something that we should, for me, is I'm going to start thinking about when I want to maybe later on in the future working with survivors again, inshallah. I think that was a really big thing for me, and essentially may have potentially caused me to leave that sector, because I felt like it wasn't agency. It didn't give them agency, and I think that's really important, especially on their journey to healing and overcoming this trauma. I think I've got some more. I just wanted to also say is, for me, when I was growing up in my experiences, I think when we're growing up in the dynamics between Habla and Maha in the household, I felt like for me and my upbringing and the experiences of my other fellow Somalis is that Habla didn't have the experiences of we weren't ever encouraged to verbalize our needs and our wants. We weren't ever encouraged that. We were kind of like, you need to listen to what's being told, and there's certain rules and regulations that were applied to us. And I think in Umahena, we almost encourage that in the household. And I think if we want to start thinking about taking accountability, I think we need to start thinking about the dynamics between boys and girls and how we're bringing up our kids, especially with sexual assault and in the subtle ways of sexual assault in intimate relationships, and creating a space where we can teach our kids about healthy boundaries and healthy relationships and what is abuse, because they can happen in subtle ways, in sexual coercion and sexual pressure within even intimate relationships. And I think this is something that we need to start teaching and to even start thinking about, as maybe if we do decide to have children, these dynamics that I think is really, really, really embedded in our culture. I think this is some of the things that I've just talked about. So I'll leave
Thank you, Sagal. We're going to move on to Hafsa. Hassan?
Hey. So the ways that we can try to fight this within our own communities, I think first and foremost is education. Our children are completely unaware and unprepared for any type of sexual health education. The only sexual health education they receive is within schools, which is highly problematic, because if you're waiting until the age of maybe like 10, 11, 12 to discover what is appropriate, inappropriate sexual contact, to learn about consent, and even consent is a relatively new vocabulary that we're using within sexual health and sexual education due to the whole Me Too movement and the awareness of sexual violence now. So even these concepts are new to us within the diaspora who are now learning about them. It's more difficult to try to ingrain this within Somali households. So number one, we need to take responsibility for our own children. I think anyone who is a parent should really educate themselves in these topics, because without the parent's intervention, the children will not learn from a very, very young age what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. Also conditioning, like I can't remember which one of the sisters made this statement, but it's inappropriate to teach your children to be sitting on the laps of adults that are foreign to them, that are not their parents. Cultural habits like these need to actually be eliminated. For example, I was reading a journal the other day which said something along the lines of like, don't be nude in front of your toddlers. When a child hits the age of 2 years old, okay, you do not want to normalize nudity. We have a tradition within, I remember growing up with my aunties, and they would be going to an event or whatever. It's very normal for them to get undressed. And let's not forget, like, sexual assault can happen between women, you know, women and children. So do not normalize certain habits within your children, so that it will be, you know, they will find certain things weird. Like, you know, it's weird for me to sit in the lap of a stranger. It's weird for me to see somebody naked. It's weird for me to be alone with grown men. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for me, number one is education. Number two is actually monitoring your children. I think it was Farhia who made these points. Monitoring your children. Like, not everybody has your child's best interest at heart. Like, a lot of the cases that I was hearing is exactly what Farhia was talking about. It's like most people know who their assailant is. The person who's assaulting you is not someone who's foreign to you. It's someone within your family, someone within your community. There's a lot of students who experience sexual assault at the hands of their Islamic teachers. Like, we cannot be so gullible and so naive when it comes to who we entrust the care of our children to. Like, a lot of these cases are coming from, you know, survivors are talking about, you know, this happened to me through religious school. And it's like, who do I tell? It's like, everywhere I go, there seems to be a cultural wall, a religious wall that's built up, that I can't come now and express myself. Me personally, I do not feel like we can change, you know, our elders. You know, I'm not looking to my mother's generation, or, you know, even, you know, people who are 40 plus. I'm literally looking to adults who are 40 and under to seriously educate themselves, seriously educate their children, and then make this a point. Like, sexual health is very, very important. It's not something that is, you know, as a Muslim, it's not something to be looked down upon. It's part of, it's part of, you know, it's part of life. You know what I'm saying? This is how we all got here. It's not something dirty. It's not something filthy. We've shrouded sex in shame culture, so that anything. I remember even, you know, I'm going to speak about my own personal experience. I was never taught about periods until I came to school. Like anything to do with, you know, your reproductive systems and all of this, we never want to address it. You know what I'm saying? So for me, we really have to take everything back and start from the beginning, from the bottom up, from very, very early on. Do not trust your children with anybody outside of yourself. Because again, this is not foreign people. It's like aderada, abtiyasha, in aderada. Like it is your direct blood relatives that sometimes are the cause of the problem. So education, and sexual health education, sexual violence education needs to be within the meshids. It needs to be within the duksi. You know, if you need to separate, you know, like male students and young girls, for example, do so, but keep these children informed. It is a must that we break the taboo and break the silence of not speaking about sexual health and sexual violence, because the two go hand in hand. If you don't know anything about your body, you won't know what's being done to your body. So again, it's like we need to, for someone to have agency over themselves, they need to understand how they work. You know, they need to understand who has a right to this body. And a lot of people don't, because we're being forced to interact with relatives 24/7. A lot of my students, they don't even really understand what's happened to them. And you know, like they'll come to me, you know, like it won't be the younger students, it will be the older ones. It will be like the GCSE students to college students. I've taught in like adult colleges or adult females. It will never be the younger students. It will take them several years of education and learning about themselves and doing their own research to actually come to the understanding of, wow, I was assaulted, you know? And then by that time, there's a lot of therapy and there's a lot of counseling that needs to take place. I feel like if you're a parent and if you are an aunt or uncle to somebody and you genuinely have the children's best interest at heart, educate yourself and make sure that, honest to God, where I am at today, my personal opinion is, do not trust your children with anybody, because this issue is, I genuinely believe this in every household. I genuinely believe that. If it hasn't happened to you, right, it could be someone within your family who's a perpetrator, because at this point, the numbers don't add up. The numbers literally don't add up. So it's better to be safe. It's better to be vigilant. It's better to be an extra strict parent than it is to be, you know, this extremely naive and extremely trusting. No, this is red kega. This is, you know, the kega wayan. And then later on, you found out your 7-year-old, your 5-year-old, your 8-year-old was molested. Like, I would even go as far as saying, like, there's no, even your blood brother, let's be honest, because a lot of the time what will happen is something will happen to these boys themselves and then they will reenact it. And the way women are even seen, patriarchy is very deeply rooted within the male psyche. So really and truly, the first people you should be having these conversations with are your direct male relatives. I have two brothers. And I have heavy conversations with them about misogyny, about patriarchy, about their opinions on women, about, you know, like what they perceive to be Islamic and what is actually cultural. These are conversations that need to start with our own direct relatives. I'm not going to trust you off the bat, because off the bat, you might be completely misogynistic. You might hear something happen to my child and you might not want to tell me. So again, we have to really deal with the reality that is at hand, is that we really need to vet people, and we really need to be on the guard. This is not something that's happening to other people far away. I've had few, even my own direct relatives, come up to me and say, you know what, Hafsa, like this is happening to me, or this has happened to me. And now I'm just like, okay, cool. So my baby's just gonna, I don't have children right now, but if I was to have a child, my child isn't going anywhere but with me. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to be responsible for that baby. And if anything happens to that baby, it will be me that will have to deal with all of the repercussions, you know, until that child is of age. So it's better to be extremely paranoid. It's better to be extremely vigilant than it is to, you know, have to deal with something that you can never change. You can never take that back. Once it happens to your child, or you can never reverse it.
We've had quite a few people put their hands up, so I'm going to give them
no problem, inshallah.
We're going to go to Suad, then Rahma, and then Sagal.
Okay. Just I will add it quick one, and I will add it 3 points. One is we need to stop and personalize everything. And what that means is when somebody tells you the experience, you don't give them advice what they should be and so. And the other thing, Somali people, we have this mentality, we know about everything. you don't know about everything. I'm studying psychology for 8 years. I know only, I don't know nothing yet. But can we stop tell all of us all the time, we think we know the answer and we good talker. We talk all the time. We don't do solution. And we let people down. We traumatize people again. And I want people to stop to ask people, tell me how it happened to you. That is, you traumatize the person again, because their body, it go back again where they've been happened to them in memory and so. The only thing I think we can help is make the law work for everybody. We need to create law work for everybody. And the other thing is we need to teach ourselves, we don't want to survive all the time. I want to have good quality life. When you have all of us Somali, wallahi, wherever we are, if you are a doctor or wherever you are rich, all of us, we just in this survive mood all the time, because we are inherited this, because we war, we surviving. I want a quality life. I want my children living the best life, happy life. It's not you are by a degree, but that is why I want to add it. Please, first, we need to give quality, because all of these people in the hierarchy, some of the people, I don't know how they got there. The question is, if you not give me good quality, you don't deserve. Use people who we give them and places, they need to know you surface me. If you're not doing good for me, you need to get out of wherever you're doing.
We basically need to hold people in power accountable.
Yes, that is the only way, because we've done with Qabil, we've done women. And for her, she was saying, yes, women abusing women again, because women who raising that man too. But that is another issue we have. For now, we need to take action. And I wanted to say, we need to action. And the other thing what I wanted to say to survivor is, don't give up on yourself. There is somebody and somewhere for you. And if you live in West culture, don't accept any therapy, because you need to ask the surface the right therapy for you.
Thank you, Suad. We're going to move on to Rahma.
I was going off something that Fathia said, that she has a lot of stories of victims back home that have been abused. So my question is, what do we do for victims back home? Even though I'm opening a center, inshallah, in September for women and families who have been affected by abuse, any sort of abuse. But until then, what do we do for these victims?
Rahma, can we just park that question for now and save it to the end, because we're going to have questions from viewers as well. So let us just get through the questions that we have, and then we'll get back to that one, I promise. Sagal, you raised your hand before. Did you want to comment on something?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly just add one last thing that I really wanted to mention as well, is within the Somali community, I just wanted to stop policing women. I think it's really important in this topic, and I feel like there's this culture, especially growing up, is men have this it's almost like innate within the Somali community, where they have ownership of our bodies and ownership of us. And I always remember, brothers being overprotective in the way they police, their sisters. And it wasn't a way, for me, I didn't see it as a way of care and love. It was a way of, don't bring Heb to us. Don't bring Heb to our name. And for me, I feel like that is so problematic. And I really feel like it really contributes to this sexual assault and rape culture that there is within the Somali community. And I just want us to, start allowing us as women to have ownership of our bodies and have ownership of and control, and and the Somali people to start seeing that and respecting women. Let's start supporting women where they're coming from a place of respect and love and care. And I really feel like that would really, I think that could be one of the first steps that we could try and take, and dismantle this Heb and shame culture that's silencing people. I feel like that's really important, and I just wanted to add that, because I think even aside from sexual assault and rape, I feel like there is this ownership where we feel like Somali men and even general, even women feel like they can, you know, comment and have ownership of Somali women as well. And I think this kind of plays into what we're talking about and what's at hand today in the topic. So I just thought.
Thank you, Sagal. Reiso?
Hi. So it was just in addition to what Sagal was saying in terms of policing women, I agree 100%. And I think it also comes down to whenever a woman does anything or it's scrutinized, the scrutiny is at an extreme level. And then but then we don't receive the same kind of level of compassion that our Somali brothers would. So, you know, a lot of them get in trouble with the law, and yet we find it and as we should, finding excuses and compassion and, you know, to understand what were they going through and what was the reason. Whereas for women, just by existing, we're extremely scrutinized and policed constantly. And I think it also goes back to this issue of ownership that you've mentioned. And I think it's why a lot of men start caring about issues when they phrase it based on the relationship or the positionality of women to other men. So things like, oh, you know, my sister, my whatever, what if it was your mother? What if it was your niece? And the issue with that is that they don't see women as being fully human being in control of their own bodies and having their own agencies. So that's also a point that I wanted to raise.
Thank you, Reiso. We're going to move on to the next question, which is, what measures can we take to safeguard and eliminate this from our community? Is it justifiable for people to name and shame perpetrators on social media? We're going to go to Fathia.
Oh my God, I don't really know where to begin. So I get a lot of stories from young women all over the world, especially from back home, and and obviously our entire religion became just about women. It came down to just policing women and how we behave, what we wear, what we do, how we talk, how we eat, everything. And so often, yeah, I'm a storyteller, so I want to share a couple of stories with you. I think people can relate to stories better than anything else. So there's this there's this one particular story where an imam, a sheikh, actually has been raping this young boy for a long period of time. And every day after Duksi, the young boy leaves and then comes back around a certain time. And then other young friends realize, why does he always go back to the Duksi? You know, we should follow him. So they followed him and they looked at, there's, you know, the doors have this like lines, you know, cracked lines where you can, where you can see through what's on the other side. So this young boy started looking and they actually saw the sheikh doing the young boy, like in the act. Okay, so they ran and called the police. The police came, they broke the door, they arrested the man. This is a very well-respected, well-known sheikh, a beloved, renowned sheikh. Now, his entire, this is not a secret, he was caught in the act. His entire sub-clan, of course, comes forward and tells the authorities, if you don't let him out, there's going to be a civil war here. We don't care about what happens. We don't care what he did. Just because he raped a little boy. And think about this. Think about the seriousness of this. These are people who call themselves extremely religious. That it's always about what is the woman wearing. She's not wearing the proper hijab. She's not wearing, you can't even wear just abaya and hijab. You have to have the whole jilbab back home to be considered inaad asturan tahay. And so This happens day in and day out. And what does the authorities do? They let him out because they are afraid, since there's not a strong government, they're afraid that there actually will be a civil war, because there will be a civil war. So how can we call ourselves religious? You know, Muslims, Muslim, that Islam, where is the Islam in that? Where is the Islam in that? I mean, this is a patriotic culture that always talks about, you know, ninka raga. I mean, this breaks every rule of what we Somalis see as nin raga and raganimo, okay? There's another story, this young woman. So this happens very, very often. This another young girl was raped by her stepfather. He's been raping her since she was 7 years old. And then eventually it got to the point where she could no longer walk. Her hips, literally, she just couldn't walk anymore. And her hips basically parted. I mean, you can imagine that, a 7-year-old. He's been raping her till she was around 9 years old. And then eventually when she could no longer walk, her mother asked her what happened to her. She never asked her before. He told her to never talk to your mother, or I'll kill you and your mother both. She finally tells her mother what's been happening to her. Her mother looks at her. You know what she did? She got this belt with a huge metal thing. She started beating her up, cutting her all the way to the bone, completely flattening her, okay? So literally, like, no space left in her body. I don't know whether was she mama sayr bay, was she jealous of her young child, or was she just, how dare you? I don't know. I don't even, mental health psychologists, people, you know how to address this. But anyway, so eventually when the little girl could no longer get up, they brought her to Bur'o. She was hospitalized. The little girl tells her story before she died. So these two people were arrested. Their tribe, their tribe or clan is not from the Bur'o area. They're outside of Bur'o. They actually took people from Bur'o as hostages, unless our people are let out. Eventually they refused to let them out, but they sentenced him to 4 years, and they sentenced her to 3 years. Imagine that. Where is Islam? Where is the deen in that? You don't even hear anybody talking about that. Okay? There was a sheikh the last 2 days on Facebook. I don't know if you've seen it. A man who calls himself a Duksi teacher, Quran teacher, which is, by the way, it happened to me. I'm a survivor of Quran teacher sexual assault. This sheikh, he tells this story where this young girl, 8 years old, she couldn't, she didn't memorize the surah. So then what did you do to her? Well, I just put the hijab over her head and I raped her. And then he reads the Quran, he reads the surah, and he says, this is the surah. And she didn't memorize the surah. So he raped her. And then what does he do? He goes home, takes a shower, eats food. No one, where is the deen? I am so sick and tired of every time you speak and ask for justice and humanity, you are seen as, oh, you're labeled as a feminist. You're a feminist. The Western filth. You want to bring the Western filth to our culture. We are the Islam. All of us here either live in the West or used to live in the West. What happens when somebody does that? in these cultures, so-called Gal cultures. I live in the United States. When somebody molests a child or rapes a child, it is so serious that they're not even put within the general population of the jail. They have to be separated from the rest because they will be killed. They will be raped, because even the most serious killer or serial murderer will say, why would you bother with children? You're not a man enough. And we'll show you, you know, let's have this conversation amongst us. They never make it. They usually never survive. So you have stories of this young girl. She's raped when she was 16 by this guy she's been talking to romantically. One day he invites her. He says, you know, we're having a party in my family's home. Come and I want to introduce you to my relatives. And she thinks there are other people. So she goes there, and he was the only one there. He raped her. So of course she will never tell. She will never utter a word, because what will happen? You wanted it. You went to his home. How dare you want to? Why would you even, to begin with, why would you even date a man or have hasawe? I mean, this is a natural thing that happens between men and women. You know, we have to have a conversation and talk to each other and have relationships before we get married. But no, we're expected for marriages to come from I don't know where and just happen out of nowhere. And so he rapes her. She wouldn't tell her family. So she goes back home, didn't say anything, but obviously cut off the relationship, didn't want to have anything to do with him. She gets pregnant. Mahmah Somali jirto tirada anigu ku sheegi maayo 5 bilood iyo ku sheegin. I won't tell on you, but 5 months will surely reveal your story. So she's forced to tell her parents. Her father beat her so bad, she literally just was almost incapacitated for 3 months. She was put in a room, in a very, very dark room, till she gave birth. And then when she gave birth, they got in touch with the family, the young boy's family, young man's family. It's not a young boy, in his early 20s. And they told them what happened. And so ninki ba lagu meheriyey. They made her marry her rapist just for name's sake. Astura, gabadha hal asturo. And then you know what happens? This young man is roaming around the city. They're not together. This is just a name. She still lives with her family in that dark room. Obviously, everybody calling her child the gara, you know, the bastard. Your bastard's crying. Talk to your bastard. Take care of your bastard. You're a whore. All of her siblings, everybody's calling her whore. Her parents calling her whore. Now, her father's beatings left her with a lot of broken bones and a lot of, you know, serious wounds. So at the age of 20, she can barely move around normally. So anyway, so she sees this guy roaming around the city, dating all these young girls, you know, dinner here, dinner there, doing this, having fun. What do you think he's doing with these other girls? The saga continues. This is what happens when we never come forward. We are told to never speak or utter a word. So the saga continues. These perpetrators keep going around molesting and raping children and women. And oftentimes they're even seen when a man rapes a woman and he gets a woman pregnant, or a woman comes forward and says a man or a young man raped me, he is seen as a hero. The man, wa nin raga, ninka raga, o tiba qabsatay, way qabsadeen. Wilki hebel, gabadh baa qabsatay. Wa nin raga, gabdhihii kalaa la siinaya. He actually becomes a hero to sought after. He will have no problem marrying other girls and in Google for this to other families to marry their daughters. Okay.
Fathia, let me ask you a quick question. You know, when you said the Duxi Ma'alin that was raping the boy, and then police and the other ones that have, you know, the police have arrested them, but their people have come after them and said, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, we're gonna cause civil war. Why do you think they aren't able to sympathize with the actual victim? Why aren't they able to feel or be angered by what's happened to the victim? Why is it they're showing more haris to this person that's from the Qabil that's clearly done something wrong to an innocent person?
Well, because like I said earlier, our culture is designed to protect the adult male. So once you become adult, you can join the club. Before that, I'm talking about boys, not women are never protected. Because you have to remember, women, first of all, we are seen as an inferior creatures. You know, konton, I'm sure what makashin, konton batay. You know, your humanity does not equal to men's, which is completely false under Islam. This is based in, I'm not a sheikh or anything, but I know enough about my faith. That's why I believe. I don't just believe blindly. You have to know the religion in order for you to practice. But oftentimes in our culture, we just practice because we were born under this religion and we never really learn. Anybody can learn a surah and memorize it. Oftentimes we don't know the meaning. So we don't really practice Islam. We practice a horrific culture, because you have to realize when the religion went to different regions, each region or country or culture took it in a way that's befitting under its culture. So our culture was horrific, comparative culture. And so we practice Islam. We just took what fit our culture, because culture is far more powerful.
Pick and mix whatever suits, you know,
exactly.
our culture.
So this young boy, once you become an adult, if you were raped, then if you come forward, then there might be justice or there might be a very serious consequences. But if you're an adult, you'll never come forward, because then you'll be seen as khaniski. Allah kila, kila hukufsaday, wa nage. So you'll never come forward. And as a child, if you come forward, women, first of all, you don't even matter. Nobody. There are no heroes in our culture. There are no heroes who fight for the underprivileged, the poor, the children, the woman, the elders, the elderly, or elderly have much better chance than most of us. But anyway, there are no heroes. So nobody's going to fight for you. If you're a woman, you're completely dismissed. You're just merely here in this world, in this universe, to serve your brothers, to serve men. But the boys, you will not be protected as long as you're a child.
So Fathia, before I let some of the other ones that put their hand up speak, I just want to ask you as well. Recently, we've seen, a lot of survivors coming forward on social media, mashallah. But there's some people that are questioning whether it's the right thing to, name your perpetrator on social media. Where do you stand on that?
So this young girl, the young woman who got pregnant, I asked her, because she's worried that he's doing the same thing he did to her, to other girls. And so I said, send me his information, his social media handles, and I can, I will put it out there. I don't care. And she said, Javier, no, I can't do that, because they'll know that it came from me. And I'm more worried about my family, she said, and what they will do to me than even when he can do to me. So I truly think we should. That's the only discourse we have at this point, because nobody's going to do anything for anybody. I think we should start naming people and put their names out there and shaming. I mean, because the more we do this, and the more, yes, there's a huge opposition, because men protect each other. They protect each other, even if they don't agree with what these horrible people do, they still have to protect the culture. It's the same thing you hear about, you know, with Black Lives Matter and white people. There are plenty of decent, kind white folks who really care about the protection of all of humanity, but they have to protect the culture, the system that has protected them for so long, you know? And so the men will not give up this very, very easily. They protect each other, expecting that I'm gonna try to just protect my own family, my own children, even if I'm a good man. I'm just gonna do that. But I'm just not gonna speak up.
So do you think right now the only way, you know, survivors feel or victims feel like they can get justice is by, you know, naming and shaming on social media?
By naming and shaming, and the more we do this, the more this is going to catch on. Because, by the way, I'm a founder of a project, a new organization called Somali Women Global Network. And it's designed to give women a voice, bring all of us, whether we lead other organizations or whatever, bring all of us together so we can have our voices collectively under one umbrella where we can, you know, hold these cultures accountable. And we can actually, you know, we have to make it clear that what's happening, because everybody's attacking me and I'm sure attacking all of you, calling us, well, you're not practicing Islam, you're attacking Islam, because they know that's how they can silence us. Well, we know our Islam and that they're not practicing Islam. So we have to hold these people accountable and say, no, okay, you are not practicing Islam.
Thank you, Fadhia. We have to move on. So I'm going to ask Hafsa to comment. You raised your hand.
Yeah, I just want to point out that we need to stop conflating Islam and Muslims together. Like, that needs to come to an end very quickly. Somali people, like America, we have an ideal. Our ideal is Islam. America's ideal is the what is that thing that they all signed? Declaration of Independence, right? Do Americans actually uphold the Declaration of Independence? No, they don't. They're morally bankrupt. Do Somalis uphold the Sharia? No, they don't. They're morally bankrupt. And we need to now disassociate the two, okay? Islam and Somali Muslims are not the same thing. So attacking the wrong that we're doing as a people is not the same as attacking Islam, okay? We like to lump everything together in one group. The second thing is we have more culture than we do our Islamic teachings within our religion. For example, the fact that you would even force the woman to have the child and go to full term and give birth, Islamically within the Sharia, right? I study Maliki fiqh. Before 3 months, before the baby is breathed, you know, before the baby starts kicking and life is breathed into it, you can have a termination. And the termination doesn't have to come from you know, being sick or anything like this. You can actually have a termination. So the fact that we're actually steeped in ignorance of what Islam actually is, right? That we're forcing these young girls to give birth to because even within the Sharia, right? You can definitely have an abortion if someone rapes you. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, you can have a termination prior to before 121 days anyway. You don't even need a real reason. It could just be like, I'm really busy, or, you know, mentally I can't afford to have a baby right now. I'm not it doesn't matter. Before the 121 days within the Sharia, you can have an abortion. But we don't know that. We don't know that because we're not studying Islam to better ourselves as human beings, to perfect our character. We've just, you know, taken, as Farhia was saying, bits and bobs that we like within the Sharia, whatever we agree with, or, you know, we believe in the Prophet ﷺ, you know, we will accept prayer and Hajj and all the rest of it. But when it comes to the perfection of character, we're completely bankrupt. We're completely bankrupt. We are more worried about shame culture and maintaining the honor of the family than we are about saving lives. So we really have to have a complete reassessment of who we are as a people. It's not enough that you call yourself a Muslim. You actually have to be a decent person. And that's another thing. It's like, me attacking your character is not the same as me attacking your religion. That's not one and the same thing. And I absolutely agree with Farhia that women should just come and if you want to go to social media and name your shame your predator, you should do so, because only 2% of the women that come forward, okay, 2% are known to be false cases. The other 98% happen to be real cases, and only 2% of those 98 cases actually go to court. So if a woman says that I've been sexually assaulted, that I've been sexually violated, believe her, because she's most probably right. And as Muslims, when someone comes to you and says I've been raped, you're meant to believe them anyway. You're meant to believe them anyway. So you're meant to protect them as a victim from just their word. And then you have due process that takes part. It's not really prove it. That's not how it goes in Islam. It's, I've been molested. Oh my God. Okay, cool. Come. We need to take care of you first and foremost. Are you okay? What can we do to assist you? And second of all, we need to have like a justice system that's actually just. The reason why our country is in shambles right now is that we don't know how to be just as a people. And when you don't know how to be just as a collective, you tend to have a breakdown that takes place. You know, we did not have outside sources like other countries, okay? Like, yes, we've been colonized in the past or whatever, but our civil war came about because morally, we came to a state where we were completely decrepit. And now we have people who are trying to survive the aftermath of the civil war. But on top of that, we still have all of these cultural reminiscences that continue to weigh us down and bring us down. And I personally don't, if Somalia was not a Muslim country, right, it'd probably be like it wouldn't make a difference, because the way we manage each other, the way that we console one another, the way we make space for one another is completely un-Islamic. It's completely un-Islamic. So you boasting about being Muslims and being a Muslim country, or we're 100% Shafi'i, we're 100% Sunni Muslim, who cares? That's just by name. It's not by nature. By nature, we're completely beasts. We're acting like beasts. A beast will come and enter another beast and think nothing of it. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not enter your wives like beasts. You know what I'm saying? You're meant to have like all the beautiful things that our religion teaches us about, you know, being together and intimacy and sexual health and sexual gratification. You know, people don't even understand that you can actually, there's all of these things that are halal to you. You know, women are just meant to be the receivers of, we're just going to receive the male. You know, and even if you haven't experienced sexual violence within your own marriage, right, you might be getting abuse and you don't even know why. There's a reason why we have so much animosity. Why are we so angry as a group of people? Why are we so quick to fight? Why are we so quick to be at loggerheads with one another? It's more than tribe. It's more than tribe. Me personally, we're completely morally decrepit at this point. And we need to have a complete reassessment of who we are as a group of people. Because saying that I'm a Muslim and that I come from a Muslim country is simply not enough. It's simply not enough. Because everything about you, it's like the Americans that say, oh no, you know, America's justice, America's justice. Where's your justice? I don't see no justice. I don't see no justice.
Hafsa, thank you. We've got to move on to the rest. We've got a few people that put their hands up. Farhia, I see your hand. We're just going to go to Rada, Suad, Sagal, and then Farhia, and then we'll move on to the next question. So, Rada?
I just quickly want to add that, you know, the sister made really good points, by the way. And I just want to really quickly add that she's so correct. The condition of our country, you know, the condition of our people, they have no morals at all, no adab. And look how angry Allah is with us. Look at the condition of Somalia. It's like a desert. It doesn't rain there. That's a good example to look at the condition of a country. When they want rain, they have to really pray hard for rain. It rains maybe, who knows, just, you know, once a year, some areas of Somalia. Why? Because Allah anger has entered, you know, in Somalia, because nobody helps their brother. Our deen says, help your brothers and I will help you. And that's where Somalis have failed. Nobody is helping anyone. And now look, and they're always talking about, look at this Galo person, you know, they don't have manners. But it is actually the Galo, and let me just finish it quickly. It's actually the Galo who sometimes really practices what our Prophet has taught us. Look at the condition of these Galo countries. It rains every other week. Rain is a sign of ni'mah. It's a sign of blessing. Why did Allah bless these countries? And why is not Somalia blessed? Why isn't the desert? Why do they die out of drought? Because they have no manners. They have no, nobody is helping their brothers or the closest. Today, most Somalis are most enemies with their own brothers and sisters. The closer your relatives, they don't even talk anymore. That's the condition of our people. And another real quick thing I wanted to add is that mostly perpetrators, they're suffering from a lot of mental issues. They are mentally distorted. I mean, there's no one, especially the ones who rape kids, they are mentally distorted. There's no way that someone with, you know, qulub, with good iman would rape a child. And if all these so-called sheikhs are raping kids that they teach in the Quran, I believe that they are mentally distorted. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Radha. Before I let you speak, Suad, I just want to remind you all we're running out of time. So please, if you're going to comment or say anything, try to stick to the topic and try to keep it concise. Thank you. Suad?
And first, I want to thank Farah. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing other people's story. I know it's really traumatic in country. My body was really, I don't know, it was too much for me to take it on. Like, the one thing I wanted to say is, for me, is I don't want to just talk about all of this negative. For me, I'm somebody see the worst of my people and I see the best of them. I'm somebody, I was in the war, and in the middle of the night, and we left our house. I see the worst of my people. And at the same time, I believe there is the best too. But I want to just go back. There is a lot of people doing good things in our society. But the problem is we have in the safeguarding, back to the question is, the only way we do safeguarding is because Qabil, religion, is actually the system is suffering from man using it, because if we listen to Quran or Hadith or Muhadara, is coming from man. It's obviously in psychology we know everything I'm telling you now is coming from my view, my own experience. And people who teaching things, they're going to tell you their own view. We are biased as human beings. That being said, I think we need to have law where we can, that is the only way we can do safeguarding. And the other thing, what we want to remind people is, Somali people, they're surviving for so long. And I think the system, it didn't, I remember who is Somali said to me, Somalidan, waxa ka soo baxay nafsigii dumarka ayaa ka soo baxay. Does that mean the justice is not served for some people, and especially women? But the safeguarding, the way we can do safeguarding is, first, we need to see children as children, first. And the second of all, we need to stop using marriage is just producing children. Second of all, we need to stop arurta in a Lord, they're going to help me later when I'm growing up. If you don't have capacity to have children, please don't have children. We need to take that important step, because what happens if everybody, like as women, you be measured to have children? Your capacity, you cannot raise children. My society expects you be under pressure before you're 25. When you get married, 25, when you see your husband, when you see your, the same thing is going on. The pressure is just to have children. And I think it's the time, if you not have capacity to raise any child, we need to take away for that. And we need to see who's creating this safeguarding systemic. Whether in Somalia and here, they all together in Somalia, wherever they sit in, you only see one woman between all at the table. But I think the way we need to now is we need to speak up. We speak up only emotionally.
To add, when you just said now, you only see one woman at the table, one thing that stuck with me is what Farhia said before, which is a lot of people that are supporting these perpetrators are females as well. So in that sense, having more female representation might not help the cause, and I don't know who was that said it, was it Reiso or Sagal or Hafsa, but one of you said it needs to start from the basic knowledge of what is abuse, and how to treat it and who can abuse who and all of this, because before that, even how do you expect them to be able to safeguard children or vulnerable adults or kids properly if they don't even recognize what abuse is?
But the only way you can do it is education first and safeguarding. I need to feel safe to tell my own truth. If you've been abused, the same with Rashi. A lot of people think I'm Europeanized. I say, no, I'm not Europeanized. I'm grown up as women, grown up in Somali culture. I know my culture, I know my religion. I studied my religion 12 years. I know up, down. But the issue we have now, man is working well. Man try to separate women's power. You see? For what happened, women, they only think, okay, it's not my problem. She's not my sister. She's not my tribe. No, all of this kind of thing. For me, I see somebody, whether you are woman, whether you're Muslim or not Muslim, it's not matter. As human, I need to first relate to you. I can save you. It's not the justice. How much you love justice.
Yeah.
How far you can go. For me, I'm somebody, a lot of people, they call me I'm crazy because day and night, it takes a lot of time for me to giving people free therapy or helping them. My phone is non-stop. It's the choice I made because that is my choice. That extra step for my people, Allah. We don't want it to go extra step for anybody. We lie to ourselves.
Suad, I'm afraid we have to move on. I'm going to ask Sagal to give a quick comment and then we're going to move on to the next question. Sagal?
I just wanted to also say, I think sometimes it's a bit dangerous to say that when people go to social media to tell their stories, they're naming, shaming, because I don't think it's always the attention of the survivor. I think sometimes they want to have their story heard and they just want that acknowledgement and have that reassurance and start having those conversations. I think in regards to naming and shaming, I think especially specifically within the UK, we have a system that disempowers survivors through the criminal justice system, and also their character is on stand. Their character is literally completely taken apart if they do go to court. So I think sometimes for survivors, for them to even go to court and have their case taken there, it kind of takes them a few steps back in their journey of healing and trying to overcome this trauma. So I think even for people to be able to go onto social media and make sure that the perpetrator is held accountable, I think is a new way. I think is a positive way of people are able to get the justice that they deserve, and also perpetrators use their social media platform as a way of exploiting and finding new victims for themselves. So I think this is definitely a way. I think we should continue to use this. It was used in the Me Too campaigns, and actresses were able to actually come forward and have a solidarity group where they could actually hold people accountable that deserve to be held accountable. So I think
thank you, Saga.
Yeah,
I'm going to move on to the next question. So the next question is, who does the responsibility to fight against sexual abuse lie with? Fatuma?
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Hey, once again, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank everybody that has contributed to this conversation, much needed conversation, and way overdue. So the question is, whose responsibility is it to fight abuse? Well, the short answer is everybody. Full stop. No leaving out anybody. And just a general observation is like this panel is completely just filled up with women, but I'm challenging the men as well to stand up and fight with us, because women have been talking for so long, and it's time for the men to put in effort, because this sexual assault or any type of abuse requires effort from everybody. And with my own experiences, all I see is women talking. So I'm challenging the men to join us and help us address the situation.
Fatima, do you think the reason why some men who are in support of this movement don't take part is because they're afraid of maybe saying the wrong thing?
Well, you can take part in a conversation and still be wary of what you say, but showing up is very important. Your voices are much needed now than ever before, especially with the heartbreaking stories we're hearing, majority of which is young girls coming out and talking about what has happened to them. Not to say that men do not get abused as well, but a majority of the people that have come out are women. And the men need to contribute to this. And I'm hoping and I'm praying that the few that have come out will inspire others to also come out and talk about this openly. Narrowing down the topic, however, with the recent stories that we've heard, and some of us have also been told in private, mostly we see that the abuser has some sort of power over the victim. One example I would give is the recent teacher-student relationships, Ma'alin, and the students. So in this kind of instance, I would think the responsibility to prevent this, at least from happening, lies with the parents. We need to pay attention to who we allow around our kids.
Fatima, let me ask you a question. Have you heard about the Owl case on social media by any chance?
I've heard a few, but can you just give me a few more details about it?
Has anyone of the panelists heard of the Owl case? Rahma? Do you want to provide some detail?
Sorry. Amina, yes, I've heard about the Owl case and we've been following it on social media for the past couple of days. We're talking about the same person?
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, what was your question?
So Fatima was talking about, you know, institutional, and we're on the question where it says, who does the responsibility to fight against sexual abuse lie with? So this is a very much relevant case now that, you know, a lot of people are aware of it on social media, and this young vulnerable child was in an orphanage. And applying to this question, whose responsibility is it here to stand up against the sexual violence, and who's meant to answer to this?
Sorry, our case is different to any other sexual assault case in the country, because one, she's a child, two, she was in the care of a center that was supposed to be taking care of her. She was taken away from her parents and then brought to the center. She was supposed to receive, like, dadkii mas-uulka ka ahaa ee meesha joogay ayaaba dafirsan cawo inay waxan ku dhaceen in the center. So as soon as the hadalku yimaado, waa la farxumeeyay ama waa lagu xadgudbay ilmahan yar, ilaan ilma ay hayda, she's 13, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So everybody's pushing the responsibility aside, but the responsibility lies with the person who is responsible for that child at that specific moment of time, whether it's a center, whether it's a hospital, whether it's an organization, or their parents.
Thank you, Rahma. Reiso, you just raised your hand.
Yes, I think it was with regards to having men in the conversation, and honestly, I'm not interested in having any man that's going to speak on this issue until they are actually educated on what victim blaming looks like and what rape culture looks like. Because a lot of the times I've seen some attempts here and there, and while sometimes it might actually be doing more harm than good, because how are you going to advocate against sexual violence, but in the same breath, you're going to wish that same fate upon the perpetrator? Something's not clicking. So a lot of things are pretty problematic for when I've seen men speak out. And another part of it, again, is the ones that I've seen, I'm not generalizing, but when they try to have this chauvinism with it, where it's their responsibility to, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to protect, and, we're going to find this person, we're going to do all these things. And, I guess in the conversation, which, when it's going to get to my question, it's important to center the survivor, because they are experts of their own experience, and they know what's best for them, and they don't need somebody to come in and save them, especially not a man. So I think, or even I was watching recently, there was this sheikh that tried to have an attempt of speaking about this issue, but you know, if men are going to talk about it, the only way that they can talk about it is to speak directly to other men and telling them not to do it. I think they need to not even get into the discussion of, you know, what it is and what it looks like and things. If they don't know and if they're not educated, they should only stick with letting the men know not to do these things, because it falls on them, you know, not, instead of telling the girls or telling, you know, that we need to keep an eye on them or to watch out and to have a buddy because we're already doing all of that. We already are. So they need to have the conversation directed at their peers to tell them to stop raping women, stop harassing women, stop assaulting women. And maybe when I see a man have that conversation, I'll amplify that voice. But until then, not really interested.
Thank you, Raisa. We're just going to go back to Fatima before we move on to the next question.
Thank you, Raisa. I absolutely agree with you. When I said the men need to start having a conversation, obviously I meant with other men. They need to have a conversation with themselves and agree that we have a problem. You know, I was like having a discussion with my friends a few days ago, and we're talking about how a majority of us know a girl that's been sexually abused or is a victim of some sort of sexual abuse, but the men don't know, none of their friends. Something is not adding up. So the men need to step up and have these frank conversations with themselves and ask themselves what is going on and how can we address it. Thank you. Just to further add to my points, when I was talking about the situation where you find that we've got this trust culture in our society, where somebody like Ma'alin Duksi is like given so much respect or something, or we just give them the benefit of the doubt that they wouldn't harm the people that are left in their care. That needs to stop, because clearly it's not working. We need to know who we're leaving in charge of our kids. We need to have frank conversations with our kids. We need to have conversations about body autonomy with our kids. We need to make them feel comfortable enough to tell us if somebody is making them feel uncomfortable. Teach them that they're in charge of their body and nobody can just touch them or ask them to do anything without their consent, and that they can always come to you and tell you whatever is making them feel uncomfortable. I feel like a lot of us in the Somali community do not have these frank conversations with our children. And that's why you find that a gap is left. And normally this gap is exploited by these people. And we need to close that gap. And the best thing to do, the best way in closing that gap, in my opinion, is to just start having frank conversations with our children. Furthermore, the other responsibility of stopping sexual abuse lies with, like I said, all of us, but I want girls to become the sister's keeper. When a girl comes to you and tells you somebody's making her feel uncomfortable, or you notice something is wrong with somebody, feel free, you know, to make them feel free to come to you and have a conversation with you. Because I feel like because of this ebb thing that's attached to abuse, people are suffering in silence. So we need to let everybody know, you know, or mostly like, you can come to me, you can tell me, and I will be your keeper. I will believe you. Because a lot of people believe that the abuse was somehow their fault, and that's why they hide it. So we need to, basically what I'm saying is that we need to remove the stigma attached to sexual abuse.
Yes, thank you, Fatima. We're just going to go to Farhia, that's been holding her hand up for such a long time now. Okay. Farhia. Farhia, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay. So I want to actually comment on what Rahma said, which was that because I think many of us said this already, women don't have, you were talking about Awa's case and how the center that she was entrusted with, she was abused there, and now it's her fault. They're washing their hands off in terms of their responsibility. And obviously, way humate it's always the easiest thing to say, way humate, and then it's done with. You women are often, and girls are seen, the sad thing is we are supposed to be perfect. When we are seen as inferiors, then on top of that, we're inferiors, okay? Then we're seen as perfect, to be perfect and to stay perfect and to never bring shame. Yet we are never given the tools. Even when we are raped and violated, it's our fault. Instead of, well, okay, she's inferior, she needs your help. Why don't you then, it's your responsibility then to protect her. But no, it's her fault. I think it's so vital for us to create women's shelters, women only, women and girls, where only women work there, a safe space for, because I hear so many stories of young girls and young mothers trying to leave their abusers, and they often end up going back to them because they have no place to go to. So we need to, that's one of the things we want to create as under our project. You know, we do a membership. All of us will pay, you know, as many women as possible by the thousands. If we do $120 a year, $10 a month, and we can build shelters like in many cities across the Somali lands everywhere. And we also have to re-educate our society. What does a family looks like? A happy family, a good family. What does that look like, really? Do any of us, I mean, we think we know, but many parts of our culture, people don't really have any idea what that means, what it means to be a healthy and happy family. We need to create PSAs, you know, using the power of social media, what a happy family, a good family looks like, the relationship between relatives and children, not leaving your children with strangers or even with their close relatives, educating your children, you know, to make sure that they have the confidence to talk to you, to come to you, and to share their stories with you, and to know what to do if they're ever taken advantage of. We need to separate the difference between, you always hear, حشود عيب ولا قرية. We need to separate the difference between slander and crime. You know, عيب, you know, as عيب astur, عيب, and dembi. Ebb, for example, is if you see a girl, you know, a boy and a girl, your neighbors, you know, children hanging out outside of their home and maybe dating, you know, in our culture, it's ebb. So you don't have to repeat that and take a microphone and tell everyone. If you see your neighbor, you know, drinking, or relatives drinking or doing drugs outside, or maybe a drunk, you don't have to repeat that. That's the kind of ebb the Deen is talking about, not someone raping someone, for God's sake, not someone raping someone, or someone stealing from someone, or someone hurting someone. That's not the same. When you hide dembi, you know, crime, then what happens? It never goes away.
But Fariha, how do we go about changing people's definition of ebb and what it actually means?
Well, that's what we want to create. PSAs, videos. We have to create short stories and videos and actually show people the difference, because that is so powerful. You know, the media is so powerful. You can use it any way you like. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. But we actually have to come as Somalis, you know, in our motherland and abroad. We need to use the tools that are available to us and come to use the 21st century tools that are available. That's how you change mindsets. You know, I was in Hargeysa, I'm going to make it short, but I was in Hargeysa a couple of years ago, and I was actually with madah, you know, like masulin, and they were throwing garbage outside. Like they would open their windows and after drinking, finishing their bottle of water, they would just lower their window and throw away the garbage. And I'm like, for God's sake, the whole place is literal with garbage everywhere. In back home, it's like that. But I'm like, You're masul. Why are you doing that? Who are you throwing at? Who is going to be picking these things up, this garbage? Who is cleaning up? So these things, all of these things, we need to actually teach our people what it means to be, the golden rule, treating people how you want to be treated, and what it means to be a good citizen. Who was my young sister here? I think it was Hafsa that said, we consider ourselves Muslims. We just took the term, but we really, this is not a Western culture, because people will tell you, oh, you're bringing Western culture to us. The sad thing is, we outsource everything that's beautiful about of our deen to the white man. We give it to the white people and the Western, culture. And there was this man, I think he was one of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood. He came in early 1940s, late mid 1940s. He came to study in the United States, and that's one of the worst times in this country. Not even the beginning of civil rights and all that. It was horrible. But he came to this country, and he said he sent a letter back home in Egypt and said, I came to the land of Kufr, where Islam is being practiced. Why did he say that? He said that because the way, for example, neighbors treat each other, how people mind their own business for the most part, but if crime is taking place, how it's everybody's responsibility to come forward, how neighbors help each other, how people hold the doors for one another, how people try to collectively protect Dantagood, the greater good for the most part. Not because I love you, or I love my neighbor, or I love this other culture, or whatever, but because protecting the greater good protects me.
Farhia, we're going to have to move on, because
Okay.
Sagal and Simone have put their hand up, and then we're going to move on to the next question. So Sagal first, and then Simone, and if we can try to keep it short, please.
Hey, I just wanted to quickly jump on the point when you said, how can we define Arab culture? For me, I feel like we need to just completely eradicate Arab culture. That Arab culture, I think it basically creates a space for silence, and a space for silence creates a space for exploitation. So I just want for me, I'd like for us to completely eradicate it. Inshallah, hopefully one day.
Inshallah. Thank you, Sagal. Simone?
Yeah, I wanted to add that when it comes to how we could fight abuse within our community, I think we need to reevaluate what a woman's worth is within our community. I feel like when it comes to the woman within our culture, and when it comes to the men within our culture, I feel like we don't benefit as much as the men do. I feel like these sexual assaults and these rapes manifesting within our community has also a lot to do with how we see dumarkena within our community. I feel like people need to come back to what Islam really means, because when you look at Islam, like we know the famous last sermon of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was talking about the women, how we should respect them, how we should not torture them, how we should not beat them, and especially how not to rape our women and shame our women. So I find it very interesting how we a lot of times talk about diintena, but like in so I feel like in order for us to really create a change within our community, we have to acknowledge the imbalance between how the men are treated and how the women are treated. Because for us to suffer this long and for our countries to be in crisis, I'm not even talking about the girls that are dealing with sexual assault and rape within our community in the Western world, where they can actually go to the police and report their crimes. You would expect the Muslima to be much more safer and much more understanding. And I feel like that's where you can see that there's like a very ugly state within our community that needs a very radical change. This is not something that's going to happen tomorrow. That's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Simone. We're going to move on to the next question, which is, what can parents do to educate their boys and girls, and what precautions should they take? Rada?
Yes, parents should educate their kids about their body parts. So they should tell them early on that nobody is allowed to touch their private parts. And they should, teach also the name of the private parts. Because statistically, there's 1 in 4 girls, young girls, get raped by a family member or someone who knows. And for boys, it's 1 in 6 boys at a very young age, like between 0 to 5, they got victimized. So kids who are early on teach their body parts with the names and that nobody's allowed to touch them. And you teach them that, you know, if somebody ever touches that, even if it's close family, you tell me. So the mom should, you know, teach this education to the kids, the body parts name. And usually it's found out that kids who know the body parts name, they get less abuse, because as soon as, you know, somebody tries things like that, they will immediately mention it to their mom, because that's what the mom have told them, you know, before. So that's it.
Another question I wanted to ask you is, how do you recognize if your child is experiencing abuse?
The signs are, you know, quite a lot, and it depends, per child it's different. So it depends on the personality of the child. Say like if the child used to be like a very active person and they get abused, the signs you will see is all of a sudden, you know, they become, you know, less active. They will change. You will see a big changes in them. You would see they are not themselves. They are more sad, angrier. They don't want to, you know, bond with the parents anymore. They will, you know, feel withdrawn. They're going to keep it to themselves or want to be alone most of the time. Even when it comes to friends, they're going to lose also self-esteem to create friends or to talk to people. Because
would you say the main thing that you notice is behavioral changes in the child?
Yeah, behavioral changes. They become more withdrawn to themselves, and they become angrier and aggressive. Although they can be even very young when they are victimized, but we are human, and kids will understand that something wrong has happened to them. So although they can't defend themselves, you would see signs of anger after it happened to them. You can see that, you know, they are really upset why it happened to them. They will become more angry and aggressive, and they don't want to participate in anything or listen. They will become very withdrawn. You can see signs of depression within kids too, because kids do become depressed as well. Because at the end of the day, they are humans, but we don't understand these signs. And eating disorders is another problem. Kids, you know, lose their appetite when they get sexually abused, and post-traumatic stress disorder develops. You can see signs of post-traumatic stress disorder in their sleep. They will develop nightmares. So it's a whole bunch of signs. It's a total change of, you know, what they used to be. They're going to be more anxious because obviously they've been attacked. You can see they are becoming more anxious about the world because they've been introduced to evilness. They will understand now evil exists in this world. So they're going to lose trust in people. So they will become more anxious about their surroundings.
Radha, I wanted to ask you another question. What about the parents that say, well, I don't feel comfortable having the conversation with my child because I want to protect my child's innocence, and I feel like speaking about these things might make them scared, or, you know, what advice would you give to them? How would you advise them to approach the conversation with their kids when they're, you know, telling them what signs to look out for and what to watch, teaching them about the boundaries?
I think, you know, your child, at the end of the day, you brought them to this world, so there shouldn't be, to start with, any shame of what not telling them, what to tell them, because our body is part of us. You know, there shouldn't be any shame to naming body parts. But if there is some sort of parents who are shameful to teach their kids, maybe they can watch a video together, like an educational video together from YouTube, or, you know, allow kids to take part of the school sex teaching or whatever that most Somalis don't want to participate, because at the end of the day, they live in this country. And no matter how you know, try to not to teach your kids, they will be exposed anyways. So they might as well learn from an early age names of body parts and what's going on around the world and what's going on in this country where they live.
Thank you, Radha. We're going to go to Simone that's put a hand up.
Yeah, what I'd like to add
to that is, for example, you said something about how could you teach your children to, can you rephrase the question for me again, please?
So the question was, what can parents do to educate their boys and girls, and what precautions should they take?
Yeah, I wanted to add on to the precautions. One of the examples that I can give is, for example, you know, I remember when I was younger in primary school, we used to have an older lady that used to help us when we would wipe ourselves down when we used to go to the toilet. And I think one of the ways to teach your children, for example, is to make sure that they're the only ones who touch their private parts, because what people don't understand is abuse can happen very easily. For example, a lot of sexual offenders are teachers. So one of the way that you could teach your children, I personally don't have children, but I have 2 nephews. And one of the things that we teach them is that their private parts are their private parts, so that they can only touch them. So even if they're not capable to fully clean them, that you can still do that for your child when they come back home, because that's an easy way of touching a child, for example, in school, which a lot of parents are not aware of. So I wanted to add that to Rhoda, is it Rhoda or Rhoda? I'm sorry, Rose, her points. I agree with everything that she said.
Thank you, Simone. We're going to move on to the next question, which is, how do we hold space for a survivor? What should we do if a survivor shares their story with us? Reiso? You have to just unmute yourself. Can you unmute her, Nima?
Whoops, my bad. Okay, so I do actually have a couple of notes here that I'm gonna go through quickly. And I've also been taking some notes just so I don't forget certain things that have been mentioned during this discussion. So first I'd like to say thank you very much, Farhia, for sharing your truth with us. You know, we believe you, and it's really brave of you to have now wanting to set up these centers across different, in Somalia or in Somaliland or different Somali territories to help other survivors. So Jazakallah khair, and may Allah reward you for that. There's many ways that you can hold space for survivors. I think the most comprehensive ways that I usually help in terms of facilitations or workshops is in 3 steps. The first one being to make the survivor feel supported. And essentially what happens when somebody goes through the trauma of sexual assault is there is a sense of shame, but underlying that sense of shame is grief because something has been lost, right? So there's a loss of protection, there's a loss of safety, there's a loss of trust, etc. So when you support somebody, you restore that sense of protection that they felt like they have lost. So simply saying, I'm so sorry, nobody deserves that. Acknowledging their pain, being a shoulder to cry on, being a listening ear. You're bearing witness to that pain, but you're not making it about you. So I think we also have a tendency of when somebody tells us something that we also want to take this opportunity to say that it also happened to us. And if you are a survivor as well, you can let the person know by saying that you understand and that you've gone through something similar. So you know what they're feeling and it's normal. And that can be a way to let the person know that they're confiding into somebody that has gone through something similar. And so without making it about themselves. You can also just, be there, because sometimes we don't know what to say, and just physically being there and, saying that I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. If you are the kind of person that if this is somebody that you would like to call you anytime and you tell them, hey, you can call me anytime during the day, during the night, you have to make sure that you can honor that, because if it does happen that they need to call you and, whenever they call, they're not able to get a hold of you, you should really rethink with, what you tell a survivor in order to make them feel supported. You can also sit with them. And if you don't know what they're going through, that's also okay. You can simply say that I cannot imagine what you've been through or what that feels like, but I want to understand. And just being honest with that goes a long way. And survivors feel most supported when people want to understand and ask questions. So that's the first part. You don't have to do all of them, but those are just some tips in order to help make somebody feel supported. The second point would be validation. And what validation does is that it restores this sense of trust that often survivors feel that they've lost. And I think the biggest fear is that people won't believe them, or people won't, trust them, or that they're somehow, this untrustworthy person. And if they're in an emotionally manipulative situation, they can be gaslit to the point where they question their own reality and don't even know or don't even trust themselves often. So, how you can help is you can simply validate them by saying that, I'm here to listen. You're not here to judge, that you believe survivors. And that means there's absolutely no doubting. And you don't ask questions in a way that makes it feel like they might be like there might be a loophole, or there might be something missing, or there might be something more to the story. You can also provide reassurance that what they're thinking and what they're feeling are real, even the difficult feelings. So I've seen that happen where a survivor is going to say that they feel, that they're completely worthless, or that they feel that they were used, or, things like that. And then the first thing that the person is going to tell them is, no, you're not, you're not worthless at all. You're not, used, or you're not a whore, these kinds of things. And that's not helpful, because that's just how they feel in the moment. And it's normal to feel that way when you've gone through something traumatic, and you have to acknowledge even the difficult feelings before you can get through the root of it and weed out perhaps the unfounded foundation for the reason why they're feeling this way. But you have to just give reassurance that what they're feeling is normal and it's valid. Another way to make sure that somebody feels validated is not to distract them, because I know another tactic that we use is to maybe start telling funny stories, or try to change the subject, or distract them, or say, hey, let's go out for this, or let's watch a movie or something, get your mind off of it. That's not helpful, because that's very dismissive. And, that's not a way to restore the sense of trust, because when they finally open up to you and you try to dismiss them, it's unhelpful. And I guess so another point would be important is when you're trying to restore a sense of trust, you need to honestly evaluate what your capacity is and what you can truly take on, and what your role can be as a peer supporter. So it doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes, because I have made mistakes. I'm sure we've all have made mistakes, and we learn from them, because we're not experts. And it doesn't mean that you have all the answers. It simply means that you can be reliable and that they can count on you. So if I know that I'm traveling around and I'm not going to be able to tell somebody that they can call me anytime, I will say, hey, you can, on Saturdays mornings, I'll give you a call, or, those are the time, let's go out for brunch, or I'll come over at this time. You can do like a specific timeline of, what works for you. You guys can do weekly check-ins, whatever works, however you want to do that. The third point in creating a safe space is honoring their autonomy. And that helps them restore their sense of control. And I think it was Suad, if I'm not mistaken, in my notes here. Yes, that mentioned that survivors sometimes might put themselves in like situations in order to perhaps reenact these, perhaps sometimes it can be dangerous situations, in order to feel a sense of control and see if they can change the scenario this time, if they can change the outcome and they can regain control. And also Sagal has mentioned that survivors have agency. So it's really important to honor their autonomy, because they are, once again, experts of their own experience. And that can mean something as simple as asking before touching or coming into their space. So if you have somebody or a friend of yours, a sister, whoever, that you could just barge into the room before, maybe this time you should consider knocking and just asking if I can come in. And when you do, hey, is it okay if I sit here? And just double checking. Also, if it's like social media stuff, I know a lot of people have shared their stories on Twitter or on different platforms. Even if it's a public forum, it might still be a good idea to ask the person that shared that story if it's okay for you to repost it on whatever platform, because they may, have consented to have it out there, on Twitter, but now that it's on Instagram or now that it's in a totally different platform, it can get overwhelming. So just ask first. Ask them what they need. Don't tell them what you think that they need right now. So I've also seen a lot of times we want to take on this caregiver role. Somebody mentioned we should be our sister's keepers. We absolutely should, but we shouldn't be patronizing either. So if somebody comes up to you and tells you and shares their trauma with you, now's not the time for you to be like, okay, I'm going to fix it. We're going to get you at that house. I'm going to create this GoFundMe, for you. Here's a Cash App. I've already set up a, email and a password, because it's not your job to fix them. They're not, they're experts of their own experience, of their own journey, like healing journey, and that needs to be respected. I think there was a concrete example of a sister that I was speaking with and I was in contact with, who was, since childhood, was being sexually abused by her father, and she felt empowered by sharing her story, but then quickly became overwhelmed and completely deactivated her Twitter because, everybody was trying to be the hero, and it became really overwhelming. And there was a reason why she couldn't move out, because she was the eldest and there was younger siblings there. So she felt like she needed to protect her younger siblings. And by questioning the survivor, why aren't you leaving the house? You should be leaving. You need to go and get, this person arrested. You need to make a case. You need to do all these things. People don't even realize that when you go through legal proceedings, how traumatizing it can get, and why so many survivors actually don't want to go that route. And so by just taking over what we think they need, as opposed to asking them what they need, we might be doing more damage than good. And then the baseline for everybody would just be to educate yourselves. You need to educate yourselves on what consent means, educate yourselves on what rape culture means, and that includes the umbrella of victim blaming. If you're Muslim, it would be a good idea as well to understand, and I've seen it also where, and it's practiced in some Muslim countries, where somebody comes up and says that they've been raped, and they're asking for 4 witnesses when quoting the Quran, Surah Al-Nur, for that. But I'm not an expert. You don't need to. I mean, you can talk to any person with knowledge that can tell you that the specific surah is talking about people who are slandering chaste women, whether married or unmarried, and accusing them of committing zina or committing adultery. And if that's the case, then it's on the person that is saying these things to then produce these 4 witnesses. It is not the case of when somebody is raped, and we actually do have an example, a hadith that we actually do have, where a woman who was walking towards the mosque, I think it was right before Fajr, who was raped on her way there. And then, when it happened, she was talking to everybody and yelling and saying that this has happened to me. Eventually, a group of Sahabas came through and explained this guy went this way. By the time they went to go and capture whoever it was, she was at the mosque and speaking with the Prophet ﷺ, explaining what happened. So whoever they had grabbed, they asked, is this the person that did this to you? And she said, yes. And so they were getting, and that's when the questioning stopped for her. Nobody asked, what she was doing at that time, who she was with, why she was walking alone, why couldn't she have prayed at her own home. That's when the questioning stopped. The interrogation started for that man. That man swore up and down and said he was not the one that did this, but the proceedings continued for the punishment, which is a very severe punishment, by the way, for people who think that they can get away with it in this life. They certainly will not in the hereafter. So when that happened, and he was about to be executed, the actual perpetrator rose up and said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like, I'm the one that did it. And at that point, the Prophet, peace be upon him, told the lady, you can go ahead, like, Allah has already forgiven you for, I guess in this case, it was unintentionally falsely accusing somebody else. And then this one was let go as well because he was innocent, and then this person ended up, being executed. What lessons we learned from this is that our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was definitely not a rape apologist, was definitely not a victim blamer, and believed the survivor without question. And even if, like in this case, was very close, where somebody could have potentially falsely accused somebody, the chances of that happening are so slim that if it happens, unintentionally, like in this case, Allah has forgiven this person. And if it happens intentionally, somebody, purposely decides to falsely accuse somebody, then that is a judgment that's going to wait for you in the afterlife. But that should not be, the basis for why we decide that we need to question a survivor further, or further, stigmatize them or not believe them. So that would be kind of how you can hold space for survivors and support them.
Thank you, Hargeysa. That was very much detailed. Just wanted to ask you a quick question, and also to the rest of the panelists before we move on to Fatima. If there's any links or supporting documents that you want to provide, please send it to me, and we will be putting it in the description of the video later on, so people can have access to it. Fatima?
Thank you, Raiso. That was very well articulated and very helpful. I just wanted to just add a quick point. Like, I know everybody's coming out on social media. Like, a lot of people have come out on social media, whether privately or publicly, about the experiences. I just wanted to let people know that are not ready to come out, that if they aren't ready to come out, that they shouldn't come out, and they shouldn't feel pressured to come out, because re-victimization is a thing, and going through that whole process all over again can be further damaging. Just that point. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Fatima. We're going to move on to the next question, which is the non-consensual distribution of intimate images / videos. What is this, and does it exist in our community? Simone?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of knowledge about that, but I do know one story. When I used to study in England, it was about a young Somali lady who was at a party, and apparently she was under substance and she was filmed, and she didn't know she was being filmed. What I can remember from that story is that she was raped, gang raped by multiple Somali guys, and also held that piece of, I guess, they were blackmailing her basically. And what happened was, well, first of all, I guess from that situation, because that was happening in real time when I used to live there. I used to go to college in Leicester, and this situation happened in Derby, which is not so far from Leicester. And as the story was going, the video got basically put on blast. I don't remember specifically if it was on Facebook. I don't remember the details. What I do remember is that the Somali girl was being blackmailed by these guys. So she had to keep performing, how do you say it? She had to keep having sex with these Somali boys, or else they would put the video online for everyone to see. Apparently that went on for some time until one of the guys actually started having feelings for her. So at the end of the day, he manipulated that girl so badly that he ended up marrying the Somali girl. So does this happen in our community? I guess it does, because that's something that happened in real time at the time. Do I believe that happens a lot in our community? I can't really speak on that because I have never heard about it again after that incident. There is another incident that I do know of, but one person is Somali and the other person isn't. So I don't think that would be of any value in this conversation. But what I do, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my opinion, I feel like within our community, most of us are 3 steps ahead when it comes to being blackmailed with that type of material, because like you guys said, sharaf iyo magac iyo marka laga fikiro, we're very in fear that our private lives, since a lot of youngsters drink, since a lot of youngsters party and do their thing, I feel like if this is something that happens in our community and is known of, it's a lot of times under substance, which I also would like to add to the fact that there are a lot of, when it comes to this topic, I would like to add that a lot of girls that get raped in situations when they're, for example, at a party, or they went to the club, or they went somewhere where they were not supposed to be at, I feel like a lot of them also are ashamed to tell what happened to them, because it feels like they need to expose themselves in order to expose the perpetrator. And I feel like that's also one of those big things where girls are scared to come out, because you already get side-eyed if you are the goody two-shoe girl that got raped by, I don't know, a neighbor, a colleague, whatever. So I feel like that's also a really big problem in our community for why a lot of girls are scared to speak on the fact that they are survivors, as we like to say, but in all actuality, victims.
Thank you, Simone. We're going to go on to Sagal before we go on to some of the questions that have been asked by the viewers.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly comment on in regards to what this is, this revenge porn. And I just wanted to just quickly shed light on, I've heard a lot of stories from my hometown where women have done this to other women, where their ex-partners or current partners have shared these photos to friends, and they've actually put it out in front of the community. One girl actually specifically threw photos outside a mosque when everyone was coming out so people could see that. And I feel like this is an example of how the Arab community basically essentially, is so detrimental to Hablahen, our women, because it allows us to, like the story that Simone's just shared, it's basically a space where they could continue to be, that woman was continuing to be exploited because of this Arab culture, where she felt she couldn't, go and get support or, disclose this information because of being, she was worried about being exposed. And I think it's quite relevant. And it's also not just by men, it's a lot of women that are doing it to other women as well. So I just wanted to quickly mention that.
Thank you, Sagal. I just remembered, before we move on to the questions, Rahma, there was a question that I asked you to park. Do you just want to ask that question now?
The question, what was the question again? Sorry.
So I think the question you were asking was to do with the center that you're opening, and how, how exactly do you provide, a space?
Yes, the question was for, I think, Hiya. The question was because she mentioned stories of victims. I think most of the ladies here have mentioned stories of victims that have been affected and are back home. So my question was to the whole of the panel and everybody that's watching: what can we do as a community in order to move forward from this issue, and in order to help the victims? All we do is talk, we come together, it's true, we talk about it a lot, but what actions can we take in order for these victims to come forward and actually have the confidence to come forward to us? And is there any help available back home for victims who are watching, or who may watch this video, or anybody who's watching that knows anybody that's affected by abuse, any sort of abuse? What kind of help is there available out there for them? I mean, we know here in these countries, there is a lot of help out here, but back home, what sort of help is there out there? Who can they turn to, and are they aware of that information?
Thank you, Rahma. Raisa has put her hand up.
Yeah, so I can't really speak to back home. I'm only aware of the first rape crisis center that is in Mogadishu via the Elman Peace Center, but I'm not too familiar with any other ones. But I know that for at least in Canada and US and UK, I know that in UK there's, or at least in London, there's an initiative of young Somali sisters. I think it's called Somali Survivors Initiative, and they are raising money to provide free access to therapy. And then there's also the Somali Mental Health Fund, which I'm a member of, and it's more broadly trying to support these initiatives that are happening kind of everywhere, especially in Somali concentrated cities, in the States, as well as in Canada and in the UK, primarily because that's where they would be able to have access to, Black therapists, Black women therapists as well. And also because a lot of the stories that came out of Twitter were, started really like in Minnesota, where we have a highest concentration of Somalis as well outside of Somalia. So I know that that's an initiative that's happening, and I know that there was Farhi, I think, that mentioned that there's a global Somali network thing. So it'd be really great if afterwards we could probably just see if either through the Wada Xaajood page or wherever else, to have all these initiatives out there so people can be can know, and there can be collaborative efforts as well, inshallah.
Yes, definitely. Just like we did last week, we'll be sharing all the links. So, the Somali Mental Health Fund, and Farhia also mentioned the network that she started. Rada also mentioned the well-being that she's created, network platform that she's created. So we'll be sharing the links to all of those. We're just going to move on to the questions for some of the viewers, and any of the panelists can go ahead and answer them. So the first one is from Mustafa Aden. He says, from a legal standpoint, an ineffective, non-existent judicial system makes it more likely for individuals to commit these offences because there is no accountability. I mean, yeah, there's no real question in there. But here's a question from Hafsa Hassan. We have to get the wadada on this because the elderly tend to listen to them. Do you guys agree or disagree, or what do you think? Did you guys hear the question?
Sorry, if I just may add, Amina, people usually, we have this idea of people back home not being able to have the courts and the justice system on their side. They actually do. Surprisingly, they do. Is the fact that I think, especially for the past 4 years, it was different. After 8 o'clock in the evening, I couldn't go out or send any members of my family outside after 8 o'clock because there was gangs around in the areas that would either rape women or take their phones or whatever, thieves, let's just say, yeah. So within a period of 4 years, that has been eradicated. Every person that has been involved in a rape case it was sentenced through the justice system. So odayashi iyo ayaa meesha ka dhex baxay. But the problem is the victim coming forward? Is the victim willing to sacrifice the fact that she's going to be known? 1, 2, yes, there's going to be a victim shaming, but is she willing to take that risk with support behind her?
But Rahma, let me ask you, because I think we should be careful with saying the problem is, so you're saying that, it's been eradicated in 4 years' time, but these police officers that, if an individual was to experience sexual abuse and they were to go to a police officer in a station, I mean, have they gotten proper training in how to, talk to a survivor or?
Oh, no, not at all. They don't have training how to talk to a survivor. But if the survivor points out the perpetrator or says that person has assaulted me or raped me, or it will go to court. It's going to go to court. And there's lawyers out there back home and organizations that do work with victims. But it's just these people are afraid to come forward because they don't know what help is out there. They have no information. So if the victim was to come forward, there's nobody out there who's going to support you or believe you.
Okay, thank you, Rahma. We're going to go on to Simone.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Hafsa said. I think that's really important. There's a quote that I heard that says, in order for you to be understood, you have to understand the person first. So you can basically try to make them understand in their language. And you can kind of, how can I compare it to like a love language? Okay. And what you said about traditional leaders, it's true. When it comes to our parents, the way they almost half worship traditional leaders is ridiculous. And I think if the traditional leaders are on our side and understand our problem, especially in the mosque, I think it would be easier for us to help them understand how serious the issue is, because those are the figures. They're very prone to listen to what they have to say, because I don't want to say it, but like I feel like a lot of our parents follow certain sheikhs blindly, not knowing their background. And a lot of times you'll hear them say, for example, when they're in conversation, I heard, this sheikh say this, that, and the other, but they never actually done any research on what he said, so they just take it blindly. So I think informing our tradition.
Some sheikhs nowadays are taking up the name sheikh a bit too lightly.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
To have that name, and someone that truly, deserves to have that name, they are so cautious at what they say and how they talk to people and what kind of advice they give. But there's so many Somalis for some reason that are out here claiming to be sheikhs.
I mean, if we're going to be honest, if I wear a abayt right now in a hijab, I go to the mosque 5 times a day, right? I say Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Everyone's going to be like, oh my God, she's changed. She's such a pious woman. They've only seen me going to the mosque 5 times a day, and already I'm some kind of, but in the meantime, I could be a very evil person creating a lot of problems within the community just by my tongue. I don't have to physically hurt anybody. I don't have to physically do something. And that's why I feel like one way in getting the older generation to listen to us and have our back, because in a Western society, where we have benefited the experience of seeing people that are very open-minded, to have different perspectives, we see a lot of things differently from our parents because obviously of our upbringing, and these Western countries that we live in, or most of us are born in, became our second nature. We are outsiders when we go to our country. We're outsiders as well. And so, the other thing that I wanted to, no, go ahead, you go first.
I was just going to say, so with Hafsa's question, when she says we need to have this conversation with Wadada, maybe it's about having the conversation with the correct ones. The ones.
Well, yeah, of course, that's what I mean. The ones that have proved themselves, have the accolades, because some of them, they act like they're scholars, but they don't even have the accolades. They don't have any You actually go to university for this, to be a scholar. So yes, I definitely agree with that. We shouldn't just latch on to any quote unquote sheikh. But the other thing that I wanted to touch on as well is that one person that wasn't really a question, but was talking about that there was no real, what did he say, legislative, like a legal system.
About the legal system, yeah.
Yes, there was something that I wanted to quote, if that's okay.
Yeah, go on.
Well, there is this institution, that's called Sidra. I don't know if any of you guys know this organization. It's in Somalia. Okay. Well, I found this piece that I found very interesting, and I wanted to add it to this discussion. First of all, Sidra stands for Somali Institution for Development Research and Analysis. And this quote that I'm going to read from you guys is from their research in June 2019. So they said, one of the things that struck out to me was, they said one of the reasons that rape spikes in numbers is because sexual assault and rape and the lack of severe punishment
when it comes to the perpetrators. That's one. So no consequences whatsoever. Having the freedom or having having basically the acknowledgement of knowing that nobody's going to do anything to you. Like, I can get away with this. What are they going to do? And if you look at how long this has been going on, this like didn't happen like a year ago, or when these these tweets came out. The other thing that I found very interesting is this. Okay, I'm going to read this. They said Somali traditional norms and social construct attitudes towards sexual violence against women should be challenged and radically transformed. There must be a major shift in how sexual violence is perceived from a legislative and policy formulation perspective. We have to introduce and adopt the idea of making the law enforcement agencies and healthcare institutions to be a part of the solution and option for the victims of this crime, and change this ugly attitude that has created a space for sexual assault and rape to manifest into a crisis, which I absolutely and completely agree on, because in Somalia, when it comes to, there was a specific interview that the human rights activist did on this Somali lady called Mariam, which was, she was 37 years old, a single mother, and she was gang raped, not only once, but twice. And she went to the police station. And when she went to the police station, she went to the police station right after she was assaulted by these men. When she was telling what happened to her, she started bleeding from her injuries. And as her blood covered the bulka, the floor, the police officer told her they gave her a sponge and told her, clean up your blood. And after she did that, they said, there's nothing we can do for you. So only that story alone should show you the sentiment towards women within the government, meaning they can't go anywhere. They can't go to police. They can't, there is nowhere to go and share their stories. And I feel like that is something that also needs to change when it comes to the question that we need to have also the law enforcement and healthcare within our own countries as well to change drastically for anything to happen for the victims as well back home.
Thank you, Simone. We're going to go to Saga and then Fatima, and then we're going to move on to the next question. Saga?
Sorry. I was just going to quickly say in regards to, I think bringing Wada to the conversation, for me, the only issue I would have is I wouldn't want them to be at the forefront of the conversation. I think it should be survivor-led. I think maybe bringing them to the conversation and bringing them to the table where they can maybe contribute, support in creating awareness. Yeah, but for them leading it, I would say absolutely no. I don't think so. I don't think that is the most appropriate thing for us.
Thank you, Sagal. Fatima?
Thank you, Amina. I just wanted to quickly add that back home, law enforcement is kind of like a dual system where like there's the laws and there's the court system, and then there's Laba Odayal, like two clans coming under a tree and sorting out problems. And I find that to be very problematic, because you find that a certain man raped a girl from a different clan, and both clans will come together and finish the matter between themselves, which means the victim has no justice whatsoever. Money will exchange hands, money they'll never even see. And I feel like we need to eradicate that if we're talking about getting real justice for the victims back home. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. So the next question is from Sadia Elm. When is it a good time to teach the Somali name for the female and male genitalia? And if so, which words are correct? Even writing this, I cannot say it. It feels so wrong. Rhoda, do you want to go ahead and answer that?
Okay, briefly repeat the question. Naming.
So she said, when is it a good time to teach the Somali name for the female and male genitalia? And if so, which words are the correct to use?
I would teach them from the age of 3. Does she mean the age?
Yeah, the age. And what words to use? So she says in Somali, what words to use?
Exactly the same words that we use in our daily life for adults. I don't want to mention it here.
Yeah.
But whatever word you use, that's the word you will teach.
Okay.
So, you know, we have different dialects within the Somali. So I don't really know some dialects. What Somali say, but anywho, whatever you use, it's just the easiest thing to teach.
Thank you, Rhoda.
Yeah.
Before I come to you, Saga, I just want to ask Suad, this question that we got from a parent. She says, when is it a good time to teach the Somali name for the female and male genitalia?
I think it depends. I don't think the children intelligent and understanding language is different, and different personality and different space and different places. But I think the main age is, I think when they notice, they recognize their body, and like when it's maybe 4, 5, and 4, but the language we tell them is not the language adult using. Obviously, we need to use child language. Otherwise, we traumatize children and we expose it to them something they don't need to know. But you need to be careful what language and what age they are.
Thank you, Suad. Sagal, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to quickly say, even the person that's asked the question, it's almost like there's a shame about, she feels embarrassed about even bringing this up. For me, it's like, I just don't, it's our bodies are natural, you know, even though people have shame about periods and so forth. And I think sometimes within the Somali community, we tend to like sexualize things from such a young age. And I just feel like, whenever I think a parent will know when it's the right time to tell their child when they're asking questions. And I just think we should start, for me, I'd want to go forward with not trying to sexualize things at such a young age, and also allowing my children to know things, you know, your body is normal, it's natural, and there's nothing to be ashamed of in regards to that. So have these conversations openly.
Hold on. I think, sorry, Amina, may I add something?
Yeah, of course, go on.
I don't know whether it's what it's called in a normal day-to-day, other than what we know it as. But I think in a medical term, it's called Hargeysa Taranka. So I don't know whether we should teach that to our children or we should just stick to what we know.
So what did you say, Rahma?
That's a medical term.
For the male and female genital?
For the female.
Okay, what's the male, say that again, sorry?
In Somali, it's called Hubinta Taranka.
Okay.
So I don't know whether we should be able to use that as a term that you're not embarrassed of or by.
I think it also comes down to what Farhia said before, which I fully believe in, which is we need to make, you know, videos, educational videos for those parents that might not feel comfortable sitting with their child. At least they can watch something and maybe have a conversation around what they've watched, but, you know, just like educational short videos.
I've even been to seminars back home where they were talking about FGM and, you know, abuse, and the people who are doing the training, I thought was so Marinkariway and the word, you know, the female and the male genitals. So they used descriptions and pictures in you know, so it's not something that affects just parents. I think it's the whole Somali community.
I think it's like what Saga said, is the whole Arab culture, and also sexualizing something that doesn't need to be sexualized. But guys, we're gonna come to an end. I'm so sorry for it taking so long. But I just want to say thank you so much for taking part. I'm just gonna let you all go around and just give your closing, you know, statement. If there's anything you just want to say before we finish off. So first, we're gonna go off with Fatima.
Thanks for having us, Amina. This was like I think a very fruitful conversation. I just want to quickly just really praise today's generation of girls that have just come out. If anything is going to change, I think they are the generation that's going to lead this change, because they've been so brave to come out with their stories, and already we're having so much conversation surrounding it. And I just would like to thank them for starting this movement and hopefully ending sexual abuse or any type of abuse in the Somali community, and especially getting rid of the Arab culture, completely eradicating it. Thank you.
Thank you. Raisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody that participated on the panel. Hopefully it's the first of many of these conversations in order to do our parts. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Sagal?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I definitely think it's been a fruitful conversation. Yeah, I just think we can just move forward with start creating awareness as much as we can and just making changes within ourselves and holding ourselves accountable as well as everyone else, and just move forward with that. And inshallah, we'll be making some good movements, some large movements soon in the future. And I agree with what Fatima said in regards to Hablaha that have been sharing their story. So thank you as well.
Thank you, Sagal. Rahma?
Thank you, Amina. I want to thank you first for bringing such amazing women together on the panel. And also dadka Soomaalida na daawanaya back home and also in these countries. Aad baad mahadsan tihiin. And I just want to say that if you know anybody who's been affected, or who's a victim, or you think is a victim, or he or she is a victim, please let us know. I will put my link to my organization, and Amina will put the link with the video, inshallah. And I would like to say, let's work together in order to make a change, because it needs to change, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Rahma. Suad?
Thank you, everybody. I was honored to share with you guys today. And thank you for having me. And for only thing I will tell people who are watching today, anybody who been tricked, anything, please look after your well-being. And I'm going to tell the survivor or victim or anybody who really struggling with all of this, please look after yourself. If you need help, you can ask where you can get help. We have Huddle. You can find it in Facebook and Instagram. You can get guided where you want. Anything, you can message me in whether it's my Facebook or my Instagram. And believe me, there is a lot of amazing Somali therapy. I know we have only a handful of them, not that much. The change is happening, and I think a lot of young Somali now trying to become a psychologist. And I know to become a psychologist is really long route and it takes a long time to study. I think that is what we need, because we don't have that much psychology. It's not mean you have, and people need to know, psychology is not mean you have a degree in psychology. It's totally different thing. But I think we need that, because we need young people study psychology, becoming psychologists, and that way I think we can help people well-being, and especially trauma and education. And the other thing I want to mention is, if you need any help, take your time. It's your own story. This is your own time. Don't listen to anybody, and please look after your well-being. And I want to everybody surround us, please be careful the language you're using. Be careful sometimes making decisions for other people's life, because it's not your story, it's not your experience. And wherever we are, I hope we can heal and come together. I think we still end for today. The nation of the poem, that means we're still able to create something beautiful.
Thank you, Suad. And for those that are watching, we're going to share the link to Hadal so you can reach Suad as well. Rada?
Thanks for having invited me, Amina. I'm really glad that these talks are now, taking place within our community, because they're very well needed. And I remember back 3 years ago, I once talked about this online, and I got really, cyberbullied online on Facebook, and I got really, sort of like attacked from different angles within the community. Why did I talk about it? So I'm really glad that, finally now people are talking about it. And I want people to open, umbrella organizations for women to help survivors and victims. And I just want to say, for anyone who, 3 years ago didn't understood what this was about. Hopefully they will learn today that you know, nobody can play with human beings and rape them like that, and it's a serious issues that need to be talked about. And also there's nothing you guys can do about, you know, victims, like somebody mentioned, 98%, if they come forward to a story that's close to them, whether it happened to them or their family, is the truth. Like, you know, so the percentage of the truth is small than people who would make up things. And for anyone who, you know, would think that that bullying would have done anything to me, you are really wrong, because I'm well educated, and you can't do anything to someone who believes in themselves and who believes in Allah. At the end of the day, Allah is greater than, you know, Somali gossiping, and there's nothing that, you know, you will ever achieve from a victim story to change the story and not to believe them. It's best, you know, to follow our Prophet Muhammad's footsteps and, you know, stand for victims no matter what, and survivors. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Radha, and thank you to everyone that's been watching us, sending in questions. We're going to be sharing, you know, links where you can find support and where you can find some more further information. We'll also be sharing all the social media links that these beautiful panelists will be sharing with us. And yeah, thank you again, and thank you to all the panelists. Take care, and I'm so sorry that it went over time, but yeah,
All right.
take care. Bye.